Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we're stepping into a land of marble temples, whispered prophecies, and gods who walk with mortals. Ancient Greece, a place where democracy was born, where philosophers pondered the soul, and where every sunrise carried the weight of survival. But don't let the marble statues fool you. Behind the poetry and pageantry was a brutal world, one where disease, war, and superstition lurked in every shadow. This isn't the Greece of glossy textbooks or Hollywood battles. This is the Greece that would have tested your body, mind, and spirit, and likely broken all three. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if these strange and shadowy journeys call to you. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Share your moment in the comments. Let's light a few torches together across the dark. Now settle in, maybe dim the lights, and prepare yourself. Because ancient Greece wasn't just legendary, it was lethal. You open your eyes, and the sun is already punishing. It hangs low in the sky, but the heat presses down like a smothering cloth soaked in vinegar. The air tastes like old copper and dust. Your skin, still tender from the softness of the modern world, begins to burn within minutes. There is no sunscreen, no protective canopy, just an unforgiving sky and the dry breath of a world not built for comfort. All around you are unfamiliar sounds: goats bleating, sandals scraping on limestone, the low murmur of voices in a language you barely recognize, even though you know, somewhere deep down, it's supposed to be Greek. You're in the past now, somewhere between myth and misery. Ancient Greece. Not the Greece of theater masks and toga parties. Not the romanticized version sold on travel posters and college syllabi. This is the raw version, the real one. And it is not waiting for you to catch up. There is no helpful stranger offering a map, no welcome sign or gentle orientation. The ground is uneven and the streets are narrow, more like dirt trenches than any paved road you've seen. Human waste mixes with fish guts in the gutters. People walk past you with bundles of wood or baskets of olives, not even sparing a glance. You're already filthy. Your modern clothes are gone, replaced by a crude tunic that itches and barely covers you. The sandals they've given you are strips of leather and twine, already cutting into your ankles. Every movement makes you wince. You're hungry, but you don't know when your next meal is coming. You're thirsty, but the well water is suspect. It smells like metal and mildew. It tastes worse. You think about asking someone for help, but you don't know how to begin. Even if you did, you'd quickly realize the harsh truth. In this world, no one cares if you make it. Survival is not a shared goal here. It's an individual war, and you've already lost half the battle. You look up and spot the Acropolis in the distance. Yes, that one. But even it looks worn and tired. A heap of sun-bleached stone crawling with laborers and the occasional priest. It's not the polished marble museum piece you've seen in documentaries. It's unfinished, cracked, alive in a way that feels threatening, not awe-inspiring. You get the sense that if you walked toward it, you'd either be conscripted for work or arrested for stepping somewhere sacred. The rules are not written. They're lived, enforced by custom, suspicion, and sometimes brute force. You're an outsider. That's obvious to everyone but you. You're already drawing attention. Not the curious kind either. The kind that precedes a warning, or worse, an accusation. You are not a citizen. You are not a slave. You are not even a known quantity. And that's the most dangerous thing to be in ancient Greece. Unplaceable. You thought time travel might be enlightening. Instead, it's a death sentence with scenic views. The sun continues to climb. Somewhere, someone is calling out for a sacrifice. Somewhere else, a child coughs blood into a clay pot. The day has only just begun, and you're already running out of chances. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's not just the dry heat or the smoke from distant hearths. It's something deeper, more primal. A sour, animal-like stench that clings to the streets, the people, and even your own skin. You haven't bathed since you arrived, and frankly, neither has anyone else. Hygiene, as you understand it, doesn't exist here. The idea of washing daily with soap, of brushing teeth, of changing into fresh clothes, it's all modern fantasy. In ancient Greece, water is precious, and soap is a luxury made from ash and lard, used sparingly, if at all. Public baths are rare outside of the more advanced city-states, and even then, they're communal. If you're lucky, you might be invited to pour tepid water over yourself from a shared basin, then scrub with a strigil, a curved bronze blade that scrapes the grime off your body like paint off a wall. You attempt to find a quiet place to relieve yourself, only to discover there are no real toilets. The concept of privacy hasn't been invented either. Chamber pots, if you're fortunate enough to have access to one, are emptied directly into the street. You see a child casually tip a ceramic bowl of human waste out a window and onto the dirt path below, barely looking to see if anyone is in the splash zone. This is normal. You pass a group of women washing linens in a muddy stream that's also being used downstream by someone else's livestock. You hesitate to even step into the water, let alone drink from it. And yet, this is survival. You'll either adapt to the filth or perish from it. There's no third option. The locals don't look particularly bothered by any of this. Their feet are toughened from years of walking barefoot or on sandaled soles. Their clothes are stained but functional. Their faces are sun-scorched and stoic, and most of them regard you with a mix of disinterest and vague suspicion. They've never seen anyone quite like you. Pale, confused, reeking of foreignness, and it shows. One older man, missing most of his teeth, mutters something under his breath as you pass. It doesn't sound welcoming. You move faster. Your stomach growls. Food is not easily come by, especially if you have no coin, no trade, and no connections. You find a small, open-air market, more a cluster of rickety stalls than anything organized, and spot some olives, a basket of fish, and what looks like barley bread going stale in the sun. The vendor squints at you. He knows you have nothing. You try to mime hunger, but he just laughs, pointing to the fish guts discarded in a corner. For you, he says. You take it. You eat it. Because dignity is a luxury you lost the moment you stepped out of your century. A sharp cough escapes you halfway through chewing. You're not sure if it's from the fish, the air, or something deeper settling in your lungs. You look around for help. No one stops. No one speaks. Welcome to ancient Greece. You're already being digested by it. You wake up with a pounding head and an aching gut. At first you think it might be the fish you swallowed the night before, but then you realize it's something worse, something crawling beneath your skin. Your joints feel like they've been packed with hot stones. Your throat is dry, raw, and every breath scrapes against the inside of your chest. You're burning up. Fever, a bad one, and you're already too weak to stand. In the world you came from, this would mean a trip to the doctor, a course of antibiotics, a bed with clean sheets, and someone checking in on you every few hours. But here, in this brutal cradle of civilization, all you have is the hard ground and the hope that you don't die before sundown. Your surroundings don't seem too concerned. Someone steps over your body like it's a loose cobblestone. In the distance, a goat bleats. You try to call out, but your voice fails. Your tongue feels swollen. Your eyes blur. It's not just the discomfort, it's the knowledge creeping in slowly that this isn't just a fever, It's an illness, a real one. And you're in ancient Greece, where illness isn't just a health problem, it's a social death sentence. You can already feel people avoiding you. The ancient world has no tolerance for weakness and no patience for healing the unknown. They won't risk getting too close, not for a stranger, not for anyone. You drag yourself toward a shaded wall and slump down, sweat soaking your tunic. You think maybe someone will help. Someone must. But the reality of your situation only becomes clearer with each passing hour. If you're lucky, someone will bring you water in a chipped clay cup, possibly left a few feet away so they don't have to touch you. If you're not lucky, you'll be dragged out of town and left in a ditch, far from where your body can spread sickness to the rest. And if you're truly unlucky, well, let's just say some temples consider sickness a divine punishment. That means no treatment, no mercy. You've offended a god, and now your body is the battlefield where that vengeance plays out. The sweating gets worse. Your breath shortens. You realize too late that there is no diagnosis coming. No one's going to tell you what this is. It might be typhoid. It might be smallpox. It might be something worse. You'll never know. The knowledge doesn't exist yet. All you have are symptoms. A burning fever, a swollen tongue, a body turning on itself, and no escape hatch. As night falls, you catch glimpses of torchlight flickering between buildings. Somewhere nearby, music plays faintly, a lyre maybe, or a flute. Life continues. But for you, it's a race against an enemy you can't see and a world that has no interest in saving you. You close your eyes. The fever wraps tighter. You're not dying in a hospital. You're dying in a gutter. In ancient Greece, that's called medicine. The sun rises, and your fever hasn't broken. You're lying in the dirt, barely conscious, when someone finally notices you. Not with concern, more with irritation, like you're a piece of garbage left in the wrong place. A younger man approaches cautiously, a cloth wrapped over his mouth and nose, as if that will shield him from whatever affliction you're carrying. He doesn't speak to you directly. Instead, he waves over two others, and together they hoist you up like a sack of wheat. Your body screams with pain at the sudden movement, but you can't muster the strength to protest. You don't know where they're taking you, and honestly, at this point, it hardly matters. You're dumped outside the gates of a temple complex, left on a slab of stone beneath a faded statue of a bearded man with a staff. This, you learn, is the sanctuary of Asclepius, the god of healing. It's not a hospital. It's a temple. And the only treatment you're going to receive here is sleep. Sacred sleep, they call it. Incubation. You're expected to lie still beneath the gaze of the gods, close your eyes, and wait for a divine dream to cure you. Maybe Asclepius will appear to you in a vision. Maybe he'll whisper the secret to healing in your ear. Or maybe he won't show up at all, and you'll die in your sleep. Just another offering in the long line of forgotten supplicants. A priest passes by, chanting softly, burning incense that does little to mask the sourness of nearby illness. He doesn't ask about your symptoms. He doesn't examine your body. Instead, he leaves a small dish of olive oil beside your head and moves on. You're not treated like a patient. You're treated like someone awaiting judgment. The belief is that sickness is a result of moral failure or divine anger or cosmic imbalance. Not bacteria, not a virus, not anything with a name or a cure. You drift in and out of consciousness, the heat baking your skin, the groaning of other sufferers echoing through the columns. One man to your left is muttering in his sleep. Another to your right hasn't moved in hours. Somewhere deeper in the temple, a child is crying, whether from pain or fear, you can't tell. At one point, someone pours water into your mouth while you're too delirious to resist. It's lukewarm and metallic, but you swallow it like it's the nectar of the gods. Eventually, you do dream. You see a serpent coiling around your leg, then feel a sharp pain where its fangs might have sunk in. You wake up gasping, only to find a real snake slithering away from your body. Sacred animal of Asclepius, the priest says the next morning when you recount your dream. You've been healed. You still feel like death, but your time here is up. You're expected to leave. Whether you actually recover is beside the point. In ancient Greece, divine intervention is the closest thing to medicine, and sometimes even the gods don't pick up their messages. You stagger back into the sun, barely holding yourself upright. Your fever has dulled, but not disappeared. The priest said you were cured, and that's all the world needs to hear. In ancient Greece, once the temple declares you healed, the social contract is fulfilled, even if your skin is still clammy and your limbs tremble with every step. No one wants to see your illness any longer. If you collapse now, it's no longer divine punishment. It's your own fault. You didn't believe hard enough. You didn't pray well enough. Or perhaps the gods simply don't like you. Who are you to question their reasons? As you limp through the streets, a young woman glances at you, then quickly looks away. She crosses to the other side of the road. Mothers pull children out of your path. You are marked now, not physically, but by rumor, by fear. Word spreads quickly in a town this small. That's the one who coughed blood, someone whispers. The one they dragged to Asclepius. Maybe cursed. Maybe contagious. Definitely trouble. Even the dogs give you space. You are still very much alive, but socially, you've been cut off at the root. You duck into an alley to escape the sun. The stone wall you lean on is hot to the touch. Flies buzz around you. You wonder what would happen if you just laid back down and let it all happen. If the sickness returned in full force and took you out quietly. But even dying here isn't simple. Death in ancient Greece is ceremonial, controlled, supervised. If you die without proper rites, your soul might not even reach the underworld. It'll wander, restless, denied entry to Hades because no one lit a fire or whispered your name over the right herbs. You'll be stuck, not just dead, but erased. A man passes by selling garlic and onions strung together like beads. You reach out weakly, ask for help. He looks down, snorts, and keeps walking. You don't blame him. He has no reason to help a stranger with no coin, no kin, and no protection. You are nothing here. You don't belong to a family, a polis, or a god. In this world, identity is everything. Citizenship determines your rights. Lineage determines your worth. Without either, you're not just poor, you're expendable. You force yourself upright again. Your legs shake, but you move. If the fever is coming back, you need shelter before it does. Somewhere hidden, somewhere quiet. Because if they see you collapse again, there's no guarantee they'll drag you back to the temple this time. They might drag you somewhere darker, farther, where the body won't be found until it's already bones. In ancient Greece, your second chance is often your last. And the gods are not known for their generosity. You move forward because you have no other direction. You're not healing. You're surviving. Just enough to die another day. You find a shaded corner behind what looks like a tanner's workshop. The smell is hideous. Acrid smoke, rotting flesh, the sharp sting of urine used in the tanning process. But it's shelter. And more importantly, it's out of sight. You sit with your back to the wall, knees drawn up, trying not to think about how much worse you feel than you did this morning. Your body is unraveling, and your surroundings aren't going to stitch you back together. There's no nurse, no phone to call for help, no ambulance with flashing lights. In ancient Greece, your only real lifeline is belief, either yours or someone else's. And even that has its limits. Eventually, someone finds you. Not a healer. A man wearing a worn-out chiton and holding a staff, carved crudely with winding patterns. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't ask permission. He squats beside you and studies your face like you're a cracked amphora he's thinking about tossing. He smells like herbs and sweat. Around his neck hangs a string of bones. Animal, you hope. He opens your eyes with thick fingers and mutters something under his breath. Then, satisfied, he announces that you have a disturbance of the hot humors. He pulls a pouch from his belt and begins mixing powder into a gourd of wine. It smells like vinegar and wild onions. You hesitate. He shoves the gourd into your hands. Drink, before the black bile settles in your lungs. There's no bedside manner here. Just urgency, ritual, and an iron certainty built on centuries of inherited guesswork. You drink. It burns on the way down. He nods, satisfied, then tells you he'll return before nightfall. If the fever worsens, he says, they may have to cut you to let the heat escape. Cut you. It sounds almost casual the way he says it, like trimming a vine or carving a chicken. He points at your elbow. There, he says, or here, motioning to your ribs. If the spirit is hiding near the heart, it must be chased out. You want to ask who trained him, who taught him this, but you already know the answer. No one. Or maybe everyone. Medicine in this time isn't something learned through textbooks or clinical trials. It's passed down, whispered, misremembered. A blend of fragments from Hippocrates, Galen, and the local gossip. The man treating you is a physician only because he says he is, and because no one else has claimed the role in this quarter of the city. He might have saved people. He might have killed them. There's no way to know. By nightfall, your fever hasn't improved. True to his word, the man returns. He lights a small oil lamp, dips a bronze blade in wine, and starts chanting. Your breath quickens. You want to run, but your body is too heavy. He isn't sharpening the blade. He isn't checking your pulse. He's going to cut. And the gods help you if he believes it's working. In ancient Greece, belief is often the only tool in the kit. And you're about to feel every inch of it. The blade doesn't go deep, but it doesn't have to. You feel the pressure before the sting, then the warmth of your own blood sliding down your arm. The so-called physician wipes it away with a strip of cloth that looks like it's been used before, more than once. He murmurs something about the bad heat being drawn out, about your body realigning with the seasons. Too much spring in your chest, he mutters, binding the wound with a paste that smells of crushed garlic and vinegar. Your skin is still burning, but now it's joined by a slow, dull throb that pulses with every heartbeat. This is not healing. This is something closer to ritualized guesswork, performed with confidence but no consequence. If you die, he'll blame the imbalance of humors or the wrath of Apollo, never his own knife. As the bleeding slows, he stands up and tells you to rest. He's done all he can. You try to ask if the fever will break. He shrugs. If it is the God's will, yes. Then he walks away, his silhouette shrinking into the gloom. You lie there, arm wrapped in soaked cloth, stomach empty, head swimming. You're not sure if the dizziness is from the fever or the blood loss. Probably both. There's no sterile gauze, no antibiotics, no follow-up visit. You'll either get better or you won't. Ancient Greek medicine doesn't wait around to see which. As the hours drag on, your thoughts drift toward home, your real home, the one with electric lights and tap water and antiseptic creams that sting but don't kill. You remember cold medicine, thermometers, a hot shower, a soft bed, the ability to Google symptoms. All of it so ordinary, so easily forgotten. until it's gone. Here, your comfort has been replaced by a hard stone floor, a gash in your arm, and the slow realization that you might be dying for no real reason at all. Just bad timing, just bad luck. At some point in the night, a rat scuttles past your foot. You flinch, but you're too tired to do anything else. The rat ignores you, chewing on something near the wall. It's a reminder that you're not the only one scavenging for survival here. The rats are thriving. The people, less so. A cough echoes from the other side of the alley. Not yours. Someone else is sick too. You wonder if they've been bled. You wonder if they'll last until morning. Sleep comes eventually. Not the healing kind, just the sort your body resorts to when it has no better options. The wound on your arm seeps through the wrappings. Your fever dreams are incoherent and feverish. Fire, shadowy figures, the sound of waves crashing somewhere far away. You dream of temples, of snakes, of hands reaching for you but never quite touching. When you wake, it's dawn again. You're still alive, but there's no applause, no progress bar. Just a new day in ancient Greece and another chance for it to kill you again. Your arm is stiff and crusted with dried blood. The bandage smells worse than the wound itself, and flies have begun to take an unhealthy interest in you. The cut is angry, swollen around the edges, and already leaking something that isn't just blood. You're too afraid to remove the wrappings, too afraid to touch it. You're not a physician, but your instincts know infection when they feel it. There's heat in your limb, a pulsing ache that creeps up toward your shoulder, and suddenly, the bleeding seems like the least of your problems. Whatever bad humor was supposed to be drawn out didn't leave. It just changed form. Now it's fever and rot, and it's winning. The real terror isn't the pain. It's that you can feel the boundary line between the world of the living and whatever comes after. It's thinner here. The line between a minor injury and a fatal one doesn't exist in ancient Greece. You don't get antibiotics. You don't get clean tools, sterile gloves, or precision scalpels. You get a man with a knife and a prayer, maybe a poultice of fig leaves and honey if he's feeling generous. If the wound festers, there are only two options: cut deeper or cauterize it. Either way, you'll scream, and there's no guarantee it will help. You've read about these things from the comfort of modernity. Now you're living it, and you want out. You drag yourself upright, using the wall to brace your weight. It feels like the air itself is pushing against you. You need help, but there is no one to ask. The last man who treated you may have worsened your chances. If you go back to him, he might cut you again, this time deeper, maybe in a place you won't recover from. You've heard people speak of a man across the city who knows more than most. A real physician, someone who's studied under the Hippocratic school, who understands anatomy and not just superstition. But reaching him means crossing the entire city on foot, through narrow alleys filled with people who see you as a walking plague. The risk is enormous, but so is staying here. You start walking. Each step is a negotiation with your own body. The pain in your arm is constant, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The street is hot and crowded. You're bumped, jostled, ignored. Your vision blurs at the edges. You hear snatches of conversations about taxes, sacrifices, harvests. No one notices you staggering by with death clinging to your skin like a second tunic. You reach the hill, finally, where you were told the physician might be found. But the house is closed. A young boy outside shrugs and tells you he's gone to another city. He'll be back in 3 weeks. You don't have 3 weeks. You might not even have 3 days. The boy offers no comfort, no alternatives. He just watches you as you sink to the ground, your breath ragged, your arms swelling beneath the cloth. There are no second opinions here, just one long, painful consultation with fate. The boy disappears behind the door, and you're left slumped at the base of a whitewashed wall, staring at nothing. You're too tired to scream, too sick to cry, and too numb to be angry. The sky above you is a perfect, mocking blue, clear, vast, and utterly indifferent. Around you, the city of Athens goes on living, humming with footsteps and voices and clattering amphorae, as though nothing is wrong. And in a way, nothing is. Not to them. You are the only one dying. The rest of the world has no reason to notice. You could vanish right here, and no one would miss a step. No one would even sweep your bones from the road. You try to breathe deeply, but the air catches in your throat like wool. Your arm is a dead weight now. Whatever infection has taken hold is moving fast. Your skin is warm to the touch. Too warm. You know that heat. You've read about it. It's the kind that comes right before the hallucinations. You close your eyes for a moment and see strange shapes behind your eyelids. Serpents, torches, something glowing and wet. Your fever is painting pictures now. And in ancient Greece, that's not just a symptom. It's a diagnosis of the spiritual kind. You hear footsteps. Light, deliberate. When you open your eyes again, a woman is standing before you. She looks poor, but not desperate. She carries a woven basket of dried herbs and something that might be pomegranate peel. She crouches beside you, studying your face with none of the fear or disgust you've come to expect. You can barely speak, but she doesn't wait for you to explain. She lifts the cloth on your arm and winces at the sight. Without asking, she tears a strip from the edge of her himation and begins dabbing your wound with a handful of crushed green leaves. It stings like fire, but you're past caring. She doesn't speak until she's nearly done. When she does, her voice is quiet, matter of fact. She's not a doctor, she tells you. Not trained, not temple blessed. But she learned from watching her grandmother, her mother, the other women in her village. They know how to keep a man alive long enough for the gods to decide what to do with him. She binds your arm with more cloth and slips something bitter between your lips. You taste ash, mint, and bark. She tells you to swallow. You do. She doesn't wait for thanks. She stands, hoists the basket back onto her shoulder, and walks away without another word. You don't even know her name. You try to call after her, but your voice is too thin. Still, for the first time in days, the panic doesn't feel so loud. The pain is still there, but something is easing, whether it's the herbs or just the kindness you can't say. But make no mistake, you're still dying. You're just doing it a little slower now. In ancient Greece, that counts as a miracle. By some cruel mercy, you make it through the night. The swelling hasn't gotten worse, yet. And your fever has settled into something steady and mean, like a coal that refuses to go out. You've managed to find a quiet place near a well, tucked behind a crumbling pillar, and you drink slowly, afraid that too much water might turn your stomach against you. Your body is in retreat, conserving what little energy it has left, and every motion feels like it has to be negotiated in advance. You're not healing. You're just not dead yet. And here in ancient Greece, that means you're doing better than most. You see a group of men passing by, arguing loudly about the behavior of the stars. One claims Mars is in retrograde, which is why his brother fell ill. Another blames the east wind, and a third insists it's divine punishment for insulting a statue of Demeter. Their robes are faded, but their words are confident, and they speak with the ease of people who have never questioned their own ignorance. These are the thinkers of the time, the interpreters of signs, the amateur astronomers, the physicians by the stars. They don't look like charlatans. They look like everyone else. One of them stops near the well and eyes you, perhaps noticing the condition of your arm, or perhaps just curious about the ragged wreck slumped in the shadows. He asks what ails you. You try to answer, but your voice fails again. He nods sagely anyway. Too much moisture in the blood, he says, as if diagnosing a squeaky hinge. An imbalance of phlegm and bile. When were you born? You blink. He repeats the question. Your birth month, your season, the day if you remember it. You mutter something about late summer. He nods again, more certain this time. The heat in your body was never tempered. You were born to fire, and fire has consumed you. You need grounding, earth, maybe a beetroot compress. You don't laugh because it hurts too much to try. He offers you a wax tablet with instructions and suggests drinking warm vinegar with crushed thyme twice daily under the morning sun. If your liver's too hot, he warns, it will corrupt your thoughts. You're too tired to tell him your thoughts are already corrupted, with the memory of pain, the rawness of fear, the sound of blood thudding in your ears. He seems satisfied with his advice, and the group moves on, still arguing about which constellation controls nosebleeds. You stay where you are. The wax tablet drops from your hand. You know enough now to realize that humoral theory is more than just a bad guess. It's the entire scaffolding of medicine in this world. You're a vessel for 4 invisible fluids, and the only cure anyone believes in is to force one out and pray the others realign. Whether that means vomiting herbs, sweating in the sun, or being bled again, none of it is based on knowledge. It's faith. Faith in a system that would rather see you weakened than healed. And that's what makes it deadly. You manage to keep yourself upright for most of the day, though every step feels like dragging a corpse you haven't quite left yet. The fever lurks under your skin, waiting for its chance to surge again, and your arm has begun to itch in that particular, ominous way that suggests things are still festering. You pass clusters of people gathering around shrines, lighting incense, whispering prayers. It's a comforting sight, until you realize that none of these people are here to wish for peace or give thanks. They're begging for mercy. Illness, injury, miscarriage, madness, all dumped at the feet of gods who are under no obligation to listen. In this world, to fall ill is to enter a negotiation with forces you can neither see nor understand. The sanctuary of Apollo looms at the top of the hill, its white columns blazing in the afternoon light. You make your way there slowly, hoping for something, anything, that might resemble help. Inside, the air is heavy with smoke and the scent of myrrh. People are lying along the cool stone floor, murmuring prayers or too weak to do even that. A priest walks among them, robes swishing, pausing only to drop a few flower petals or recite words you can't follow. You try to speak to him, to ask for help, but he cuts you off with a glance. Have you brought an offering? You haven't. Of course you haven't. What would you offer? You don't have a drachma to your name. You don't have honey cakes or wine, no trinkets of gold or ivory. You barely have your life. The priest moves on without waiting for an answer. That's the price here. Not compassion, not treatment, tribute. Healing is a transaction. If you can't afford to pay, the gods won't afford to save you. In the far corner of the sanctuary lies a woman no older than you. Her lips are cracked, her chest rising in short, shallow gasps. Someone has laid a sprig of laurel on her forehead. It does nothing. You stare at her for a long time, not because she's dying, but because you know she's you. A version of you who arrived here a few days earlier, a few days later. The difference is only timing. Everything else, the sweat, the sunken cheeks, the helplessness, is identical. As you leave the temple, the priest casts a final glance your way. Pray louder next time, he says. You don't respond. You're beginning to understand that in ancient Greece, illness isn't just something that happens to you. It's a judgment, a punishment, a sign that somewhere, somehow, you failed. Morally, spiritually, even politically. And while gods and men alike may watch you suffer, very few will lift a finger to stop it. You walk away from the temple with the knowledge that divine healing is not a gift, it's a gamble. And when the dice roll, they rarely land in your favor. You wander back down the hillside, no closer to salvation than when you climbed it. The sanctuary fades behind you like a cruel joke written in marble, an illusion of safety in a city where being sick is more of a social inconvenience than a medical emergency. You're beginning to notice how people look at you when they think you're not watching, how they stop talking as you pass, how space opens around you in crowded streets, not out of courtesy, but avoidance. In ancient Greece, visible suffering is not something met with empathy. It's a stain, a curse, and everyone around you is doing their best not to let it splash on them. You're desperate now more than ever. You need a cure, or a miracle, or at least someone who doesn't turn away when you ask for help. Which is how you find yourself drifting toward the agora, the city's beating heart, a mix of market, courthouse, and open-air theater of the absurd. Here, under the colonnades and olive trees, people sell ideas as often as they sell bread. A man stands atop a crate, shouting about wind spirits and how certain vowels, when spoken incorrectly, can rot your bones. Another claims to have discovered a universal salve made from crushed cicadas and spring dew. A crowd gathers, half curious, half entertained. You join them, more out of weakness than belief. Eventually, someone offers to look at your arm. He says he's a physician. His chiton is stained but clean. He has a confident gait and a belt pouch full of sharp things wrapped in goat leather. He seems practiced. You follow him behind a stall where he asks you to sit on a stone bench. He peels back your bandage and clicks his tongue disapprovingly. They bled you too early, he says, and not deeply enough. He's already preparing to open the wound again before you can ask why. There's stagnation here, he explains. Blocked flows. The blood must move freely. You tell him you're not sure you can take more cutting. He shrugs. Then the fever will spread, perhaps to your brain. He smiles like this is an academic observation, not a death sentence. You want to run. You want to believe someone else will have a better answer. But there is no someone else. Not in this world. He presses the flat of a bronze knife against your skin and looks at you expectantly. It dawns on you in this moment that medicine in ancient Greece is built on confidence, not competence. Whoever says they can heal you can. And if they can't, well, it must have been the gods, or your humors, or fate. Never their fault, never the knife. You pull your arm back. The man looks annoyed. Fine, he says, wrapping up his tools. But don't return to me once the rot reaches your lungs. You won't. Not because you found a better way, but because there are no better ways. Just sharper knives and louder prayers. You spend the night curled in an alcove beneath a crumbling statue, your arm wrapped tightly in what's left of your tunic. The pain is manageable now, more a throb than a scream, but you know that's not a sign of healing. It's just your body getting used to dying. Still, for a moment, you almost drift into sleep, lulled by the distant sound of sandals, scraping stone, and the hush of the wind, until the shouting starts. Not far from your hiding place, a man is being dragged through the street, wrists bound in rope, sandals scraping the dirt as he stumbles. Someone in the crowd hurls a clay pot at his head. It shatters, and the crowd cheers. A crime has been committed. Or maybe not. It doesn't really matter. Someone's decided this man is guilty, and that's all the city needs to turn justice into spectacle. You follow the noise, keeping to the edge of the gathering. What you see chills you deeper than any fever. The man is flung onto a wooden platform in the middle of the agora. A makeshift trial has begun, if you can call it that. There are no lawyers, no evidence, no rules, just a crowd and outrage. One speaker rises to denounce the accused, shouting about theft, about disrespecting the gods, about a personal slight that may or may not be real. The specifics are muddy, irrelevant. The point isn't guilt. The point is humiliation. The louder the speaker gets, the more the crowd responds, whipped into a frenzy not by facts, but by tone. You see now how fragile a life can be in ancient Greece, how quickly it can be dismantled, not with a blade or disease, but with words and noise and a crowd that smells blood. You glance around. These are your neighbors now. These are the people who would be your peers, your protectors, your fellow citizens, if you had any status. But you don't. You're an outsider, nameless, without a lineage to defend you or a reputation to soften the blows. If someone were to point at you and shout, if a rumor began that you brought plague into the city or defiled a temple, the result would be the same. You wouldn't get a trial. You'd get this: a chorus of angry strangers, all looking for someone to blame. The crowd votes, not with ballots, but by show of hands and shouted affirmations. The verdict is obvious before it's declared. The man pleads, weeping, trying to explain himself. The priest overseeing the proceedings raises a hand to silence him. Then, calmly, he reads the sentence: death, no appeal, no delay. The crowd erupts again, this time in approval. Somewhere behind you, someone spits. The man is dragged away. You slink back into the shadows. There's no safe place here. Not if you're sick. Not if you're foreign. Not if you're poor. Ancient Greece doesn't just kill with spears and sickness. Sometimes it kills with a rumor and a mob. You spend the next day moving as little as possible, hoping invisibility might protect you where prayers and poultices have failed. Your arm still burns, your stomach has turned sour, and every time you cough, you expect someone to accuse you of sorcery. You've learned quickly that in ancient Greece, to appear weak is to invite judgment, not just from the gods, but from the people who believe they speak on their behalf. You don't need to break a law to be punished here. You only need to annoy the wrong person. It starts with an argument between two vendors in the agora, one accusing the other of watering down his wine, of cheating the patrons, of invoking bad fortune on his stall. The insults escalate quickly, turning from commerce to character. And then, as casually as if he were complaining about the weather, one of them gestures to you. Ask him! He's been hanging around all day. Look at him, skulking like a thief. Suddenly, every eye turns to you. You freeze. You want to protest, to say you're not involved, but your words come out cracked and hoarse. You're sick. You're strange. You've already lost. Within minutes, you're being questioned, if shouting can be called questioning. Where are you from? Why are you here? Who do you belong to? The last one stings the most. Who do you belong to? Because in ancient Greece, nobody exists outside of a household, a family, a polis. Being a man without ties means you are a threat, socially, legally, spiritually. You're not a citizen, you're not a servant, you're something in between, and that makes people nervous. That makes you dangerous. Someone suggests you might be a runaway slave. Another speculates that you're cursed, sent here to bring disease. You try to deny it, but your voice fails you again. That cough, wet and involuntary, does more damage than any accusation. A child in the crowd cries out and hides behind his mother's tunic. That's all it takes. The energy changes. Now, you're not just strange, you're contagious. You're the problem. The crowd presses closer, but not to help. You're being surrounded, herded. This time, there is no priest to read a sentence, no platform, no trial. Just men with calloused hands and short tempers, eager for a target. One grabs your injured arm, and you scream, not just from the pain, but from the hopelessness. You're pulled off your feet, dragged through the dust, your sandals snapping. Someone suggests throwing you outside the city gates. Someone else wants to call the guards. Another says not to waste the time, just leave you in the hills. Let nature finish what fate has started. And that's when you realize the most terrifying truth of all. You don't even need to be guilty of anything in ancient Greece. You just need to be unwelcome. And once enough people agree that you are, the punishment writes itself. If you thought avoiding trouble would keep you alive, think again. In ancient Greece, the army isn't just a distant threat. It's a looming shadow that touches every corner of your life, especially if you're a man of fighting age. The moment the city-state calls for soldiers, you're conscripted regardless of your health, your hopes, or your wishes. There's no draft board, no medical exemption, no deferment for hardship. You either show up with your weapons and armor, or you disappear. And disappearing in a polis is often the same as dying. The gear you're expected to provide yourself, bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves, spear, and shield, costs a fortune. If you don't have the money, you're assigned a less desirable role, rowing a warship, running errands, or carrying equipment. These positions might sound safer, but they're brutal and exhausting, and you'll get less respect and fewer chances to survive. If you somehow avoid conscription, you'll be suspected of cowardice or disloyalty, which can be a death sentence all on its own. Your training is relentless and unforgiving. Spartan youths endure years of harsh conditioning, taught to steal, fight, and survive with no mercy. Elsewhere, your regimen might be less brutal, but no less dangerous. Every drill, every march, every battle risks a broken bone, infection, or worse. Medical care on the battlefield is primitive. No triage, no antibiotics, just the hope that you don't get hit in a vital spot. You'll fight in phalanxes, tight formations of heavily armored men who move as one. If your line breaks, you'll be trampled or stabbed before you can react. Battles are short, bloody, and chaotic. There's no glory in being the last man standing. There's only survival. And survival is rare. Many soldiers don't make it off the field. They're left for the vultures, their bodies plundered for armor and weapons. If you're lucky enough to survive the battlefield, your hardships aren't over. You'll return to a city struggling with famine, disease, and social unrest. Your family might have lost their land while you were away. Your home could be burned. You might come back a stranger, broken in body and spirit, without a place to go. War in ancient Greece doesn't just kill you in battle, it slowly destroys everything that made you human. You think of Sparta and the tales you've heard. Boys taken at 7 to be molded into warriors, stripped of their families, and forced to endure hunger, cold, and constant violence. It's a system designed to break the weak and breed killers, a society where mercy is a weakness and only the strong survive. Here, your survival isn't guaranteed by skill or luck, but by your ability to suppress pain and fear until they're strangers to you. The Agoj, Sparta's brutal training program, begins early and ends only in death or permanent exile. Boys are taught to steal, but only so they can survive. If caught, they're punished severely. Hunger is their constant companion. They are encouraged to endure it, even to relish it. Their clothes are sparse, their shelter minimal. A child who cannot endure is left to die. Spartan infants, suspected of weakness, were abandoned at birth, a fate worse than death. The message is clear: weakness has no place in Sparta. As you imagine this life, you realize there is no room for softness. Every day is a test, every failure a sentence. You must fight for food, for warmth, for respect. The community teaches you to kill enemies without hesitation, including neighbors, if necessary. Friendships are secondary to duty. Love is a distraction. Death is an ever-present companion. For the average Spartan, life is one endless battlefield. Even outside war, you're expected to prove your worth through contests of strength and endurance. Laziness is shamed, weakness mocked. You are not an individual, you are a cog in the war machine, and the machine does not stop. If you survive youth, you're drafted into the ranks, where you carry heavy armor and weapons into battle, often for years at a time. Your meals are simple, your rest scarce, your rewards few. Your family is state property. Your death is inevitable, but the hope is that you die gloriously on the battlefield as a hero of Sparta. But Sparta's iron grip extends beyond its borders. When their armies march, neighbors become slaves. You realize that living near Sparta means living in fear, not just of war, but of enslavement and loss of everything you hold dear. Spartan life is a constant gamble with death. The stakes are high, and the price is paid in blood. If Sparta was a place where survival meant becoming a warrior or dying trying, then the surrounding city-states lived in the shadow of that relentless militarism, often caught between fear and subjugation. You might not be a Spartan soldier, but your life could be just as precarious. The fear of invasion, of sudden raids, and of having your home razed or your family enslaved is never far from your mind. Every day carries the risk that the sound of approaching boots means your world will be turned upside down. Outside the cities, life for common folk is harsh, marked by backbreaking labor and constant worry. Farmers toil endlessly under the sun, bending their backs to soil that can be as unyielding as the political powers that govern them. A poor harvest could mean famine. Famine means starvation, and starvation is a slow death, often accompanied by desperation so severe it drives people to acts they wouldn't consider in better times. In these times of uncertainty, piracy on the seas and banditry on the roads compound the dangers. Trade routes are vulnerable, leaving food supplies and essential goods precariously thin. You could be walking home with a basket of bread when a band of pirates strikes the harbor, or a group of thieves ambushes the path to your village. Law enforcement is inconsistent, and often the best protection is your own ability to fight or flee. For many, neither option is available. Cities sometimes organize militias, but these are poorly trained and under-equipped. The wealthy might afford better weapons and armor, but for the average person, war means wielding crude tools and relying on luck. The sounds of clashing bronze and screams of dying men are never far away, and the battlefields are littered with bodies that no one will remember. You might dream of peace or a life beyond war and hunger, but in ancient Greece, peace is fragile and fleeting. The gods themselves seem to favor chaos. If you live through an invasion or a plague, you might still succumb to the exhaustion and despair that follows. The scars of violence aren't just physical. They seep into the land, the culture, the very bones of the people. So you live, you work, you fight, and you pray that the next day will be kinder than the last. But ancient Greece rarely is. Even when you've somehow survived the chaos of war and plague, the city's streets are far from safe. They're crowded, noisy, and thick with the smells of rotting food, unwashed bodies, and smoke. You step carefully, eyes scanning for danger. Pickpockets work in teams, slipping hands into pockets with practiced ease. Arguments flare quickly into fistfights, sometimes deadly, over spilled wine or insulted honor. You learn to keep your head down, your purse close, and your temper controlled. But the line between calm and chaos is razor thin. As night falls, the taverns become the true heart of the city's danger. What starts as laughter and song quickly turns to shouting and blood. Drunken brawls erupt over the smallest provocations. Broken stools, shattered amphorae, and knives flashing in candlelight are common sights. The guards patrol, but their presence is more about keeping order than protecting lives. If you're unlucky enough to be caught in the middle of a fight, your chances of walking away unharmed are slim. The taverns are also places where disease spreads like wildfire. Packed tightly, with poor ventilation and shared cups, they're breeding grounds for every sickness that plagues the city. The proximity means a cough or sneeze can quickly turn a tavern full of laughter into a chamber of misery. And in a city with limited medical knowledge, that cough could be the beginning of a death sentence. But the danger isn't only physical. Words spoken in the wrong tone or at the wrong time can lead to serious consequences. Honor is everything, and slights, real or imagined, must be avenged. You might wake up the next day nursing bruises from a confrontation you barely remember. Or worse, find yourself the subject of gossip that ruins your reputation and with it, your place in society. Survival in the city isn't just about avoiding the sword or the disease. It's about navigating the volatile social landscape. One misstep, one misunderstood glance, and you could find yourself alienated, attacked, or worse. The streets of ancient Greece are no place for the faint-hearted. They're alive with risk, and every day is a test of your wit, your courage, and your luck. In the depths of Sparta's harsh society, the line between survival and death is drawn by strength and ruthlessness. From the moment a boy turns 7, his fate is sealed, taken from the comfort of family and thrust into the brutal agage, a state-run program designed to forge warriors from flesh and bone. Here, there is no room for weakness, no safety net for failure. Hunger is a tool to teach cunning, pain a teacher of endurance. You're expected to steal to survive, but if you get caught, punishment is brutal. Every day is a battle against your own body and the merciless demands of the state. Spartan society is unlike anything else you've known or imagined. It's a culture obsessed with war, where every citizen is a soldier first and a man second. The weak are discarded, abandoned, or killed outright. Infants deemed unfit are left to perish. Boys grow up learning that to hesitate is to die. Compassion is a liability. Trust is reserved for those who prove themselves worthy in blood and sweat. Even as an adult, your life is governed by harsh discipline and constant training. But Sparta's cruelty extends beyond its own people. Its neighbors live in fear, subjugated and enslaved whenever the Spartan army marches. Resistance is futile. When the Spartans conquer, they do not assimilate, they dominate. Landowners become masters of slaves, and entire populations are reduced to helots, bound laborers forced to toil endlessly, always under the threat of brutal reprisal. If you are a helot, your life is a slow death by oppression. You wake every day knowing that the state permits your murder if the rulers so desire. Rebellions are crushed without mercy. The Spartans hold annual hunts to terrorize the helots, to remind them of their place. Fear is your constant companion. Hope is a forgotten luxury. For the Spartan citizen, life may be harsh, but clear. For the helot, life is a nightmare with no escape. For you, thrown into this world by fate or accident, survival is a gauntlet of blood, fear, and relentless cruelty. Sparta is not a place of heroes. It is a crucible of suffering. If the Spartans were the iron fist of ancient Greece, then the sea was home to its ghosts, the pirates who haunted the coasts and the shadowy waters between islands. These were no romantic figures singing shanties on wooden decks. They were ruthless marauders, striking without warning and disappearing just as quickly. To be caught by them meant losing everything: your goods, your ship, and often your life. Trade and travel were dangerous ventures, with every journey potentially your last. The pirates weren't just criminals, they were a force of chaos in a world already struggling to maintain order. Cities relied on the sea for food, commerce, and communication, so their attacks could cripple entire regions. Coastal villages were vulnerable, and residents lived with the constant fear of raids. You might be tending your fields when the lookout spots ships on the horizon, black sails cutting through the blue. The warning bell rings. Families scramble to hide what they can: food, valuables, even children, while the pirates close in. If the pirates caught you, mercy was rare. They would burn homes, slaughter livestock, and take captives to sell as slaves. The rich might be ransomed, but the poor were often thrown overboard or forced into servitude. Even the warriors who tried to defend their cities were often outmatched by the pirates' cunning and knowledge of the waters. You'd think the navy would be your salvation, but ancient naval forces were limited in size and resources. They were often slow to respond, leaving civilians exposed. Naval battles were chaotic and deadly, with soldiers fighting on unstable ships that could easily capsize. Being an oarsman was considered a lowly position, but incredibly dangerous. Long hours, cramped conditions, and constant threat of drowning or enemy fire. Death came not only from battle, but from exhaustion, disease, and malnutrition. Surviving the pirates wasn't just about strength, it was about luck and speed. A fast ship and sharp eyes could save you, but even then, the sea was unpredictable. Storms, reefs, and hidden shoals were as deadly as any enemy sword. The ocean was a battleground, and few who entered it walked away unscathed. For those who lived on the edges of this watery world, the threat was constant. The sea that brought life could just as easily bring death. Ancient Greece was not just a land of gods and heroes, it was a place where the waves themselves could drown you. Imagine a world where your survival hinges not just on your strength or wit, but on the unpredictable whims of forces no one fully understands. Ancient Greece was such a world. The environment itself was as much an enemy as any army or plague. Drought, famine, and the cruel unpredictability of nature shaped lives in ways that no amount of prayer or sacrifice could fully prevent. Crops withered under relentless sun, rivers dried up, and once fertile lands turned to dust. For the average person, a bad season wasn't just a setback, it was a death sentence. This mega drought lasted for generations, a slow poison that seeped into every aspect of daily life. With the fields barren and grain scarce, hunger became a constant companion. Families grew thin, faces hollow. The young and the old, the weak and the sick, were the first to fall. Starvation did not discriminate, and neither did the diseases that followed. Malnutrition weakened bodies, leaving them vulnerable to every fever, every infection, every injury. Food shortages led to desperate choices. Communities turned inward, suspicion and fear growing as neighbors eyed one another's dwindling stores. In some cases, people were driven to acts unthinkable in times of plenty. Stealing was common and punished harshly, but when starvation ruled, moral codes blurred. Stories circulate even now about villages where the starving turned on each other, where the hunger was so fierce that taboo was cast aside. Cannibalism, though rarely spoken of openly, was whispered in the darkest corners. The social fabric strained under the pressure. Families fragmented as members left in search of food or work. Migration became a survival strategy. Thousands abandoned ancestral lands, becoming refugees in other city-states or wandering the countryside, always at risk of hostility and rejection. Without land or shelter, these displaced people were vulnerable to exploitation and violence. Kings and rulers, struggling to maintain control, often failed to provide relief. Their priorities lay in maintaining armies, fortifications, and temples, not feeding starving peasants. The gods were blamed, of course, for the wrath of drought. Sacrifices increased, rituals multiplied, but the rains never came. The silence of the skies was deafening, a reminder that even divine favor was no guarantee. You might wonder how anyone survived such relentless hardship. The truth is, many didn't. Ancient Greece's glory was built on the bones of those who starved quietly, who suffered in silence, who disappeared without record. The drought didn't just kill crops, it killed hope. And in that world, hope was the most fragile thing of all. The gods had little patience for those who strayed too far from their favor. Illness, misfortune, even bad harvests were seen as signs of divine displeasure. This meant that suffering wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. When you fell ill, when your family starved, when the sea took ships and men, it was because you or your community had failed to appease the gods properly. Temples filled with offerings were your best hope, but they were also your greatest expense. Sacrifices cost money and time, things ordinary people had little of. The poor prayed with empty hands and heavy hearts, hoping their prayers would be enough. In this world, belief was both a comfort and a curse. You could never be sure if the gods were watching or if they cared. The oracle's words were cryptic and often terrifying, promising salvation only to those who could interpret them correctly. Temples buzzed with activity, priests performed elaborate rituals, and citizens sought signs in the flight of birds or the smoke of sacrifices. Yet behind all the ceremony lay a pervasive fear that the gods might decide you were expendable. This fear shaped daily life. It kept people compliant and hopeful, but it also bred superstition, scapegoating, and sometimes cruelty. A bad harvest might be blamed on a neighbor's impiety. A child's illness might lead to accusations of witchcraft. People looked for explanations in anything but natural causes. Medicine was entwined with religion. Prayers, charms, and rituals were as vital as herbs and potions. You might have thought that medicine, with its beginnings in reason and observation, would free you from superstition. But even the greatest physicians accepted that the gods played a role in health. Hippocrates himself wrote about the balance of humors, but never discounted divine influence. To many, healing was as much about faith as it was about science. For you, caught in this tangled web, the line between hope and despair was razor thin. You might place your last faith in a temple, only to have it snatched away by fate or failure. You might watch as others prayed and were spared while you suffered. And the only certainty was that death could come at any moment, without reason or mercy. In ancient Greece, survival wasn't just about the body, it was a battle for your soul. You find yourself wandering the narrow, dusty streets as the sun sinks low, casting long shadows across worn stone. The city is alive with chatter and commerce, but beneath the surface lies a tension you can't ignore. Life in ancient Greece is a fragile balance of duty, belief, and survival. Every decision you make, where you go, who you speak to, what you eat, carries weight. One wrong move can mean exile, imprisonment, or worse. Trust is scarce and safety even scarcer. You are constantly reminded of your place in a hierarchy as rigid as the marble columns in the temples. Your footsteps take you past the market, where vendors shout over one another, hawking fish, olives, and scraps of cloth. You notice a man arguing loudly with a woman, accusing her of cheating him on the price of barley. The dispute quickly escalates, drawing a crowd. This is how justice works here, not with courts or judges, but through public opinion, fueled by passion and prejudice. Laws are often vague, and enforcement is unpredictable. Someone with the right connections can bend the rules, while the powerless suffer. You realize that surviving in this society requires more than strength or skill. It demands cunning, alliances, and sometimes ruthless pragmatism. As the argument draws to a close, You overhear talk of new laws, harsher punishments handed down by rulers eager to maintain control. The threat of death looms over petty crimes. Stealing food, insulting a citizen, or even loitering without purpose could result in severe penalties. You recall stories of harsh laws, draconian they call them, where the penalty for theft might be death, no matter the value stolen. The law is a blunt instrument, wielded without mercy. You pass a group of soldiers drilling nearby, their armor clinking, their commands sharp and unyielding. Military service is not a choice, but an obligation. The city expects you to fight for its survival, to bleed and die in its name. Failure to comply brings dishonor and punishment. Your body is not your own, it belongs to the polis. Amid this chaos, you seek moments of quiet, small spaces where the noise dims and you can catch your breath. But even there, the weight of survival presses in. Ancient Greece is a world where survival is uncertain, where every day is a test of will, and where death is never far behind. It's not just a place of gods and heroes, it's a crucible that forges or crushes, without warning or mercy. The reality of punishment in ancient Greece is harsh, unforgiving, and often lethal. Justice isn't measured by fairness but by severity. You might think that laws exist to protect the weak, but in this world they mostly serve to uphold the power of the elite. The draconian legal codes, named after the lawgiver Draco, are notorious for their brutal penalties. Even minor offenses could result in death. Stealing a loaf of bread when you're starving, death. Insulting a neighbor, death. Loitering in the marketplace without purpose, death. There are no second chances, no mercy for ignorance or desperation. The punishments are swift and public. Trials are spectacles, where the accused is often shouted down, their fate decided not by evidence but by the loudest voice. A crowd gathers to witness the condemnation, feeding off the spectacle like a pack of wolves. Executions serve as warnings, meant to instill fear and submission. You might be sentenced to death by poison, by stoning, or by being thrown from a cliff. The methods are cruel, designed to make your final moments as painful and humiliating as possible. If you survive to see the gallows, the waiting is torturous. The fear, the humiliation, the knowledge that your life is hanging by a thread, it breaks more people than the execution itself. Families are shamed, their names dragged through the mud. Children might be ostracized, forced to carry the burden of their relatives' sins. For those unlucky enough to be sentenced, death is not a release, but a final humiliation. In some cases, bodies are left unburied as an additional punishment, condemned to wander as restless spirits. Burial rites, so important in Greek culture for ensuring peace in the afterlife, are denied. Your soul may be trapped, wandering the underworld, unable to find rest. The law is not a protector here. It is an enforcer of fear, a tool wielded by those in power to maintain control. And if you find yourself on the wrong side of it, you can count on a swift and brutal end. Ancient Greece's justice system is not a place for mercy. It's a place where survival often depends on silence, submission, or escape. Joining the army in ancient Greece is not a matter of personal choice but of civic duty, a burden imposed on nearly every free male citizen. The call to arms is relentless. You don't just fight for yourself, you fight for your family, your city, your way of life. But unlike modern soldiers with standardized equipment and training, you are largely on your own. The burden of provisioning your own armor, weapons, and supplies falls squarely on your shoulders. Bronze helmets, shields, breastplates, each piece a heavy investment in both coin and survival. If you can't afford them, you're relegated to the least desirable roles, often as an oarsman in the galley, a position marked by grueling labor, poor conditions, and high mortality rates. Training is harsh and unforgiving. You learn to march for miles under the punishing sun, to endure hunger and fatigue, and to fight in the phalanx formation. a tight-knit, heavily armed block of men that moves as a single, deadly unit. If your line falters, you face certain death, trampled or stabbed by your enemies, or even your comrades in the chaos. The battlefield is a blur of sweat, blood, and metal, with little room for hesitation or error. There is no battlefield hospital or medical evacuation. Wounded soldiers are left to their fate, often dying from untreated wounds or infection. Survival depends on luck, resilience, and the skill of those around you. The fear is constant, not just of the enemy, but of the unpredictable cruelty of war itself. Every clash of bronze, every scream is a reminder that death is close and mercy rare. Returning home doesn't guarantee safety or comfort. Your family might be struggling, your property damaged or seized, and your place in society diminished. The scars you carry are not just physical, but social. Many veterans are left destitute, forgotten by the very polis they fought to defend. War in ancient Greece doesn't just take your life. It can strip you of your dignity, your future, and your identity. Joining the army is to accept a life on the edge, where death is an ever-present companion and survival is the exception, not the rule. It is a brutal passage with no promises of glory, only the hope of living to see another dawn. You might have heard tales of Spartan warriors standing fearless on the battlefield, shield to shield, unyielding in their devotion to their city-state. But those stories, often romanticized and distorted, conceal a grimmer truth. Life in Sparta is a relentless trial from birth to death. Boys are taken from their families at 7, subjected to a brutal regime designed to harden their bodies and numb their minds. Hunger, cold, and pain are tools to break any softness, to forge them into weapons. Failure means abandonment, or worse. Infants deemed weak are discarded without mercy, a chilling practice that underscores the unforgiving nature of this society. Training is a crucible of cruelty. The Agoge teaches theft as survival, but punishment for failure is harsh and immediate. Hunger is a constant companion, not a challenge to overcome, but a state of existence to endure. Clothes are minimal, shelter is scarce, and kindness is nearly non-existent. Only those who can endure the constant hardships are allowed to live. Every moment is a test, every day a battle against your own limits. Beyond the physical torment lies a social system that demands absolute loyalty and sacrifice. Spartan citizens live under strict codes of honor and obedience. Individual desires are subjugated to the needs of the police. Love, family ties, and personal ambition are secondary to military excellence. Death in battle is glorified, but the reality is far less noble. Many die young, battered by decades of relentless conditioning and conflict. Sparta's dominance comes at a cost not just to its own citizens, but to its neighbors. Conquered peoples are enslaved as helots, forced into grueling labor and subjected to constant oppression. The helots live in fear of state-sponsored violence designed to keep them in submission. Rebellion is met with brutal retaliation, and life is a daily struggle against subjugation. To live in or near Sparta is to be trapped in a world ruled by fear, violence, and unyielding discipline. It is a world where mercy is a weakness and survival depends on ruthlessness. For most, Sparta is not a land of heroes, but a place of unrelenting hardship. The sea, vast and unpredictable, was both a lifeline and a graveyard for the people of ancient Greece. Coastal cities thrived on trade and fishing, but the waters were far from safe. Pirates, ruthless and cunning, prowled the Aegean and Mediterranean, striking with brutal efficiency. These weren't the romanticized rogues of later tales. They were violent criminals whose raids could devastate entire communities. Their ships moved swiftly, slipping through narrow channels and disappearing into hidden coves before authorities could respond. For ordinary people, a pirate attack meant loss of home, livelihood, and often life itself. Pirates didn't just steal goods, they took captives to sell as slaves or ransom. Wealthy merchants might negotiate their release, but common folk were often sold into brutal servitude or left to die. Coastal villages lived in constant fear, always watching the horizon for sails that spelled doom. Trade caravans were targets too, and losing a shipment could mean famine for an entire city. Naval forces were limited, often underfunded and ill-prepared to chase the swift and elusive pirates. Battles at sea were chaotic, dangerous affairs where one wrong move could mean drowning or death by sword. Oarsmen, often slaves or the poorest citizens, faced grueling conditions with little hope of survival. The sea was a battlefield where not only skill but luck determined who lived and who died. For those trapped on land, the threat of pirate raids was a constant shadow. Coastal fortifications were weak, and warnings came too late. The aftermath of a raid was devastating. Burned homes, stolen livestock, and shattered communities. Recovery was slow, and fear lingered long after the ships sailed away. Survival meant vigilance and speed. Some tried to flee inland, others armed themselves poorly, hoping to fend off attackers. Many simply prayed to Poseidon, hoping the god of the sea would spare them. But prayers rarely kept the pirates at bay. In ancient Greece, the sea was as dangerous as any enemy army, and sometimes far worse. If the pirates ruled the seas, the land had its own shadows to fear. Bandits and thieves who preyed on travelers and villagers alike. The roads between city-states were perilous, little more than dirt paths winding through forests and mountains. Merchants hauling goods, farmers moving livestock, or travelers on pilgrimage risked ambush at any moment. Bandits operated in small, agile groups, striking quickly before vanishing into the rugged terrain. There were no police patrols, no safe havens, just the constant risk of robbery, violence, and death. Survival meant traveling in groups, moving quickly, and hoping for luck. But even then, the odds were grim. Bandits were often former soldiers, mercenaries out of work, or desperate men pushed by famine and poverty. They knew the terrain intimately and were ruthless in their attacks. To resist was to risk a brutal beating, or worse. To surrender was to risk losing everything, including your life. Villages close to major roads fortified their homes as best they could, but walls and watchtowers did little to deter the desperate or the ruthless. Some communities hired mercenaries or formed militias, but these were expensive and often ineffective. Justice was haphazard. Caught bandits might be publicly executed, but many slipped through the cracks, aided by corrupt officials or sympathetic locals. The threat of banditry shaped daily life. People avoided travel unless absolutely necessary, and goods became more expensive due to the risks involved. Trade routes shifted unpredictably, hampering economies and deepening isolation. Fear and suspicion bred paranoia. Strangers were eyed with distrust, and rumors spread like wildfire. For the common person, the countryside was no safe refuge from the dangers of ancient Greece. Wild animals, harsh terrain, and hostile humans made every journey a gamble. Every step away from the city was a step into uncertainty, where death could come from blade, disease, or despair. And for many, it did. In a world ruled by uncertainty, many turned to oracles and seers, hoping to glimpse a future less cruel than the present. Delphi, home to the famed Pythia, was the heart of prophecy, a place where desperate souls sought answers from a god whose words were wrapped in riddles. To stand before the oracle was to confront the unknown, a mixture of hope and terror. The priestess's cryptic utterances could promise salvation or doom, and interpretation was an art shrouded in ambiguity. Few left feeling reassured. The power of the oracle extended far beyond the sanctuary walls. Leaders consulted her before battles, citizens before journeys, and families before births. Her words shaped decisions that could alter the fate of entire city-states. Yet for individuals, the oracle's prophecies were often warnings wrapped in mystery, difficult to understand and impossible to challenge. The future was fixed, dictated by the will of the gods, and any attempt to defy it was doomed to failure. For you, standing in line with countless others, the wait was long and the atmosphere heavy with anticipation and dread. The priestess's presence was both mesmerizing and unsettling, a figure caught between the mortal and divine. Her voice, altered by the fumes of burning herbs, carried the weight of centuries. You leaned in, desperate for guidance, for a sliver of hope. Instead, you received words that twisted like smoke, promising trials, suffering, and perhaps, if you were lucky, release. Leaving the sanctuary, the burden of prophecy weighed heavily on your shoulders. Was your fate sealed by these words? Could your actions alter the path set before you? The uncertainty gnawed at your resolve. In a world where death was constant and mercy rare, the promise of fate was both curse and comfort, a reminder that some things were beyond human control. Ancient Greece thrived on belief in the divine, but it also demanded acceptance of fate's cruel hand. And for those caught in its grip, the future often looked as perilous as the present. The night stretches before you, dark and silent, except for the faint rustling of olive branches in the warm breeze. You lie on the hard stone floor of the temple, surrounded by others who share your desperation. This is incubation, the sacred sleep where healing is said to come from the gods themselves. You close your eyes and try to still your restless body, hoping for a dream that might save you from the grip of illness. The flicker of oil lamps casts shadows that dance like spirits on the walls. The air is thick with incense and whispered prayers, a strange mix of hope and fear. As you drift between wakefulness and sleep, your mind conjures images both haunting and beautiful. You see serpents winding through sunlit groves, the staff of Asclepius glowing softly in the twilight. You dream of voices calling your name, of waters that wash away pain, of hands that reach out to mend broken flesh. These visions feel real, comforting in their mystery, but they offer no certainty. When dawn comes, you'll wake, still aching, still vulnerable, and the temple priests will interpret your dreams with solemn faces, offering cures or decrees based on symbols you barely understand. Incubation is as much a gamble as a treatment. Some are said to have been cured by divine intervention. Others simply died unnoticed, their bodies removed quietly from the temple floor. The boundary between faith and fate is thin and often crossed without warning. You are left to wonder whether healing comes from the gods or from the fragile hope that your own mind clings to in the darkness. Around you, the murmurs of other supplicants blend with the distant chants of priests and the soft clinking of bronze. The temple is a place suspended between worlds, between life and death, belief and despair. It offers a momentary refuge, a chance to surrender your suffering to something greater. But it also reminds you that in ancient Greece, healing is not a guarantee. It is a mystery, wrapped in ritual and shadow, where the line between salvation and oblivion is razor thin. You rise with the sun, feeling no different than when you lay down. But somehow, that small act of hope, the willingness to believe in the unseen, is enough to keep you moving forward, even as the dangers of this ancient world close in around you. The stone walls of your shelter are rough and unyielding beneath your trembling back. You've learned to live in the margins, in the narrow spaces between survival and surrender. Your body, still weak and marked by illness, aches with every movement. The air is thick with the scent of sweat and dust, mingling with the faint odors of herbs and smoke drifting from distant fires. Around you, life goes on, unaware or uncaring of the struggle playing out in these quiet corners. Your home, if it can be called that, is shared with many. Fleas and lice find easy hosts in the tangled hair of children. Rats scurry beneath the floorboards, stealing scraps and spreading disease with every silent step. Water is a scarce and precious resource, often contaminated and undrinkable. Bathing is rare, a luxury for the wealthy or the lucky. You haven't seen clean clothes in weeks. Your skin itches from 1,000 unseen bites, and sores you barely remember have begun to fester. Food is sparse and often spoiled. You eat what you can: stale bread, olives that have fermented in the sun, and bitter herbs. Hunger gnaws at your belly, but the risk of consuming rotten or tainted food is just as deadly as starvation. Your body is a battleground of competing needs, and every meal is a gamble with death. Sleep is fitful. Your mind is restless, haunted by fever dreams and the ever-present fear that this might be the last night you see. The world outside your shelter feels distant, both a refuge and a prison. The noise of the city is muffled but constant. The clatter of carts, the murmur of voices, the distant clang of the smith's hammer. Somewhere nearby, a child cries, a sharp, piercing sound that stabs at your weary heart. Despite everything, there is a strange resilience in this life. You learn to adapt, to find small moments of peace amid the chaos. The laughter of a child, the warmth of the sun on your face, the taste of fresh water when you find it. These are brief reprieves from the harshness, but the threats never fully fade. Illness waits in the shadows, hunger stalks the streets, and death is always just a breath away. Ancient Greece is not a land of comfort or safety. It is a place where every day survived is a victory, and every night endured is a triumph against overwhelming odds. The moment you step into a tavern, you cross into a world that is as dangerous as it is alive. The air is thick with smoke, sweat, and the sharp tang of spilled wine. The walls echo with laughter, curses, and the clatter of mugs hitting rough-hewn tables. This is where the city's shadows gather, the drunk, the desperate, the dangerous. For a moment, the hardships of the day are drowned in ale and song. But beneath the revelry lies a simmering tension, ready to boil over at the slightest provocation. Drunken brawls erupt with alarming frequency. A spilled drink, a misheard insult, or the wrong look can ignite tempers as fierce as any battle. You quickly learn to keep your head down and your fists ready. Chairs become weapons. Knives flash in the flickering candlelight. Guards patrol the room, but their presence is more for show than protection. They're outnumbered, distracted, and often indifferent. If you find yourself caught in a fight, your chances of walking away unscathed are slim. The tavern is also a breeding ground for disease. Packed tightly, with poor ventilation and shared cups, illnesses spread like wildfire. Coughs and sneezes are common preludes to fevers and infections that can turn deadly in days. For many, a night at the tavern is not just a gamble with their reputation or safety, it's a gamble with their life. Yet despite the dangers, taverns are hubs of social life. Here, information flows as freely as the wine. Rumors, news from distant cities, and political intrigue mix with bawdy jokes and songs. You might overhear whispers of impending war, new laws, or the latest scandal involving the city's elite. For those with sharp ears and sharper wits, the tavern offers a chance to navigate the complex web of alliances and enmities that define ancient Greek society. Survival here requires more than muscle. It demands cunning, caution, and a keen sense of timing. The tavern is a place where friendships are made and broken in the space of a glance, where trust is scarce and betrayal common. In ancient Greece, even a night out can be a test of your will to live. You've long ago stopped expecting mercy from toothaches, and that expectation extends to every ache and pain. Dentistry, as you understand it, doesn't exist here. Teeth rot, crack, and crumble without warning or relief. There are no dentists, no drills, no anesthesia, just desperate folk gripping wooden sticks or crude tools, trying to dislodge a painful tooth or stem a bleeding gum. You've heard of remedies, rinsing with salt water, chewing on bitter herbs, but none of it soothes the searing agony. The pain knees at your sanity. Every bite, every sip sends shockwaves through your jaw. You avoid eating, but hunger wins. You eat anyway, wincing through every mouthful. The infection festers, spreading beneath the gums, sometimes making your face swell grotesquely. Without treatment, it can move into your bloodstream, causing fever, delirium, and death. You feel your strength waning, your body succumbing to a pain that is relentless and merciless. Your breath is foul, your mouth sores, makes swallowing a torment. You hide your pain as best you can, fearing the judgment of others. In a world where illness is seen as weakness or divine punishment, showing suffering invites suspicion and scorn. You don't want to be the one who disrupts the fragile balance of the community with your misery. You think of the modern world, with dentists who can numb the pain, tools that clean and fix, medicines that cure infection. But here, your teeth are your curse. You learn to smile less, speak softly, and hope that the pain doesn't become unbearable before the gods decide your time has come. In ancient Greece, a toothache is more than an annoyance. It's a slow, grinding sentence, one that can kill just as surely as any spear. The eyes, those fragile windows to the soul, are no less vulnerable in this harsh world. Eye infections, whether from dust, disease, or injury, are common and often devastating. The dusty streets and smoky hearths constantly irritate the eyes, and with little knowledge of hygiene, the infections spread rapidly. Without antibiotics or sterile treatments, a simple irritation can spiral into blindness. You watch as a neighbor's child rubs her eyes until they swell shut, her parents too poor or too ignorant to seek any kind of remedy beyond prayers and herbal poultices. Blindness in ancient Greece is a cruel sentence. Without sight, your ability to work, to navigate the city's treacherous streets, and to provide for yourself evaporates. You become dependent on others, vulnerable to exploitation, and often cast aside as a burden. Some may find solace in temples dedicated to healing gods, but even there, the chances of recovery are slim. You witness the fear in the eyes of those who lose their sight, not just fear of darkness, but of becoming invisible in a society that prizes strength and productivity. The blind are often relegated to begging or menial tasks. Their stories, if told at all, are whispered with pity or dread. And so you guard your eyes fiercely, blinking against the dust, avoiding the smoky interiors of crowded rooms, and cursing the fate that could snatch your vision at any moment. In a world where every sense is vital for survival, losing one can be fatal. And in ancient Greece, eye infections are among the silent killers, slow, creeping, and merciless. They remind you that the dangers of this ancient world aren't always loud or sudden. Sometimes they creep in quietly and steal your future before you even know you're at risk. You've become accustomed to the constant itch, the invisible army that infests the hair and skin of everyone around you. Parasites, lice, fleas, and worms are a relentless part of life in ancient Greece, carried on the bodies of people and animals alike. Bathing is rare, clothing is seldom changed or cleaned thoroughly, and the close quarters of city life make perfect breeding grounds for these unwelcome guests. You scratch endlessly, your skin raw and bleeding, but the relief is fleeting. The parasites return as soon as your attention wanders. The worms crawling in your intestines are an unseen horror, but their effects are all too real. You suffer from fatigue, stomach pain, and weight loss. Your body weakens, defenses crumble, and every day becomes a struggle to maintain the barest spark of strength. You know that these invaders carry disease and worsen existing illnesses, but there's little you can do beyond rudimentary remedies, eating bitter herbs, hoping that poison might kill the pests without killing you first. Parasites are a humiliation, a sign of poverty and neglect. Those who suffer from them are often ostracized, whispered about as unclean or cursed. The rich and powerful might have slaves or servants to keep them clean, but for the average person, these pests are constant companions from birth until death. You feel their presence beneath your skin, a reminder that even in your own body, you are not truly alone. Living with parasites is a slow erosion of health and dignity. You wonder how people in other times or places manage to live free of such torment. But here, in ancient Greece, it is just another part of the daily struggle, one more battle you must fight to survive. Childhood in ancient Greece is not the carefree time you might imagine. It is a perilous journey marked by uncertainty and loss. Most children never reach their 10th birthday. Diseases you've barely heard of, dysentery, measles, and other fevers, sweep through families, leaving devastation in their wake. There are no vaccines, no antibiotics, no pediatric care. When a child falls ill, the options are few: pray, wait, and hope. The dangers don't end with disease. Infants and toddlers face hazards you might not expect: malnutrition, neglect, and the harshness of daily life. Food is scarce, and even when it's available, feeding a child is a delicate balance between nourishment and the risk of spoiled or contaminated food. Many children suffer from rickets, weakened bones, and stunted growth. Their bodies a testament to the harsh conditions around them. Families often mourn in silence, losing children to causes they don't understand and cannot control. The emotional toll is immense, but grief is tempered by pragmatism. To invest too much hope in a child's survival is to risk unbearable disappointment. Parents carry on, continuing the cycle, even as they bury one child and pray for the next. Education is a privilege, limited mostly to boys from wealthy families. Most children learn the harsh lessons of survival early: how to find food, avoid danger, and obey authority. For girls, life is even more constrained, destined for domestic service and childbearing, often without the chance to learn to read or write. Growing up in ancient Greece means learning quickly that life is fragile and uncertain. Every child is a gamble against fate, a hope against overwhelming odds. And for those who survive, the hardships of youth are only the beginning of a long, brutal journey. Every wound in ancient Greece carries with it the threat of a slow, painful death. Even a simple scrape from a fall can become infected, turning the injury from minor nuisance to deadly hazard. There are no antiseptics or sterile dressings, just rough cloth, vinegar, and a hope that your body will fight off whatever germs invade. The knowledge of germ theory is centuries away. Instead, people rely on observation, superstition, and the occasional herbal remedy. But without proper treatment, infection festers, spreading through the body and overwhelming the immune system. You recall the scrape on your leg from a few days ago. It was small, almost insignificant, but now it burns constantly, the skin red and swollen. The pain throbs with every heartbeat, and the flesh around the wound is warm to the touch. You've tried to clean it with water, but that only worsened the sting. There's no medicine to dull the pain, no surgeon to cut away the infected flesh. You're left to endure, waiting and watching as your body slowly turns against itself. The fear of infection shapes every decision. You avoid unnecessary movement, fearing that jostling the wound will make it worse. You watch others with similar injuries fade away, their strength ebbing until they no longer rise. The city's streets are full of such stories. Men and women crippled or dying from injuries that today would be trivial. The burden of untreated wounds weighs heavily on the community, sapping its strength and resilience. In the end, the line between healing and death is razor thin. A careless fall, a poorly tended wound, or a moment's distraction can seal your fate. In ancient Greece, survival is not just about avoiding enemies, it's about navigating the dangers your own body can unleash. Childbirth in ancient Greece is a perilous trial with no guarantees. For women, the miracle of new life is shadowed by danger, pain, and the ever-present threat of death. Medical understanding of pregnancy and delivery is limited, often mingled with superstition and myth. The womb is thought to be a wandering creature capable of causing illness and madness if it strays from its proper place. Remedies are as much about placating spirits as they are about physical care. Labor often takes place at home, attended by midwives with little formal training and few tools. These women rely on experience, tradition, and prayers, guiding births in dimly lit rooms without sterilization or pain relief. Complications like prolonged labor, hemorrhaging, or infection are common and frequently fatal. The risk to the mother is high, the risk to the infant even higher. Many children are stillborn, and many mothers never survive their first birth. Pregnancy itself is viewed ambivalently. While it is celebrated as a duty and a gift, it also brings vulnerability. Pregnant women face malnutrition, exhaustion from hard labor, and social pressures that often deny them rest or special care. Some even believe pregnancy can cure ailments, a dangerous notion that leads to women being urged to conceive in hopes of healing chronic conditions, regardless of the risks involved. The loss of a mother or child is a devastating blow to families and communities. Mourning rituals are deeply ingrained in the culture, with elaborate funerals and offerings intended to ease the passage to the afterlife. Yet for many, grief is private and unrecorded, lives cut short in silence. The cycle of birth and death continues, a harsh rhythm underscored by uncertainty and sorrow. In ancient Greece, childbirth is not a hopeful beginning, but a gamble, a test of endurance, faith, and the fragile strength of the human body. Even in times of peace, the threat of violence is never far from the streets of ancient Greece. Conflict takes many forms, not just between city-states on battlefields, but within the crowded urban centers themselves. Feuds, rivalries, and vendettas simmer beneath the surface of daily life, ready to explode with little warning. Justice is often brutal and swift, handed down by assemblies more interested in retribution than fairness. If you cross the wrong person, if you insult a neighbor or fail to pay debts, the consequences can be deadly. You learn quickly to avoid trouble, to keep your mouth shut and your head down. But sometimes, fate intervenes. A heated argument over a spilled drink or a slight word can escalate to a knife drawn in the blink of an eye. You witness stabbings in alleys and fistfights in marketplaces, violent spectacles that leave men bleeding and dying. The guards may arrive too late or may be indifferent, focusing instead on maintaining order rather than justice. Blood feuds extend beyond individuals to families and clans. An insult to one is an insult to all, and revenge is a duty that spans generations. You understand that in this world, violence is woven into the fabric of society, a tool for settling disputes and asserting power. The cycle of retribution is endless, and peace is fragile and fleeting. For ordinary people, this means living with constant vigilance. Trust is scarce, and safety is often an illusion. You learn to recognize threats in glances and tone of voice, to read the body language of those around you. Friends can become foes overnight. Alliances shift with the tides, and your survival depends on knowing when to fight, when to flee, and when to stay silent. In ancient Greece, Danger is not reserved for the battlefield. It is a constant companion in the city's streets and homes. To live here is to walk a tightrope above a pit of knives, where one misstep can mean a sudden and violent end. As dusk falls over the city, the air thickens with smoke and the cries of the market dying down. You retreat to a quiet corner, but safety feels like a fragile illusion. Night in ancient Greece brings new dangers, ones cloaked in shadow and silence. The streets grow dark, lit only by flickering oil lamps whose glow barely cuts through the gloom. This is when thieves prowl, when rival gangs stake claims, and when the weak become prey to the desperate. You wrap your cloak tightly, trying to blend into the crowd of night wanderers, merchants closing their stalls, sailors staggering home, soldiers patrolling with tired eyes. Every step is cautious, every glance calculated. The city that felt chaotic by day becomes unpredictable and menacing by night. The risk of ambush is high. A wrong turn into an alley or a momentary lapse in attention could end in robbery, assault, or worse. Even the guards, who patrol the streets, are not immune to corruption and exhaustion. Their presence may deter some troublemakers, but many look the other way for coin or favor. Justice at night is arbitrary, often administered by whoever has the most power or the sharpest blade. You learn quickly that protection comes not from the law, but from alliances, from knowing who to trust, and from carrying your own weapon if you hope to survive. In the shadows, whispered rumors of plots and betrayals circulate. Politics is a deadly game, played not only in the council chambers, but in the taverns and back alleys. Friends today may be enemies tomorrow. Loyalties are fickle. In a city where life is cheap and honor paramount, survival requires constant vigilance and adaptability. You realize that the night is not a refuge, it's another battlefield. And as you walk beneath the stars, you understand that in ancient Greece, every hour lived is a victory against a world eager to claim you. The earliest light of dawn finds you among the ruins of a forgotten temple, a place where time and decay have swallowed the grandeur of ages past. Here, the stones whisper of gods and heroes long gone, their stories carved into weathered reliefs that speak of glory and suffering alike. But beneath the faded beauty lies a stark reminder: even the mightiest fall. Civilization, with all its brilliance, is fragile, a fleeting spark against the relentless tide of nature and fate. You trace your fingers over cracked marble, feeling the roughness beneath your skin. Once, this temple was a sanctuary, a place of hope and ritual. Now, it is a tomb of forgotten dreams. The gods who once held sway here are silent, their temples abandoned or repurposed. The people who built these wonders are gone, victims of war, plague, and the unforgiving elements. As you stand amid the stones, you sense the weight of history pressing down. Every empire rises and falls, every city-state blooms and withers. Ancient Greece, for all its achievements, was no exception. The same forces that built its temples, ambition, faith, resilience, also sowed the seeds of its destruction. Famine, conflict, disease, and fear tore through its people like a storm, leaving behind echoes of a world that once was. You wonder about the lives lived here, the joys, the struggles, the small moments of grace amid hardship. For every philosopher and warrior, there were countless others who simply tried to survive another day. Their stories are lost to time, but their shadows linger in these ruins. They remind you that history is not just about greatness, but about endurance and the cost of survival. As the sun rises higher, casting light on broken columns and shattered statues, you realize that ancient Greece was a world of contrasts, beauty and brutality, hope and despair. And in that tension lies the truth of human existence. that to live is to fight against the odds and to remember those who fought before you. You wake to the sharp call of the herald, the city stirring as if from a restless dream. The day ahead is not yours to command. It is dictated by the relentless rhythms of the polis: work, worship, war. The marketplace buzzes early, traders shouting prices for olives, fish, and pottery. But beneath the bustling commerce lies a simmering tension: grudges and debts unpaid, alliances forged and broken, tempers flaring in the heat of the sun. Ancient Greek society is a crucible of social pressures where honor is currency and reputation can mean the difference between survival and ruin. You navigate narrow alleys lined with vendors and citizens, all trying to carve out a piece of the day for themselves. The weight of expectation presses down. To be a citizen is to carry responsibilities, to defend your city, to participate in assemblies, to uphold family honor. But citizenship is a privilege, tightly guarded and exclusive. Without it, you are vulnerable, a stranger in a world that values lineage and loyalty above all else. Your fate is tied to your status, and for many, that means walking a knife's edge. The law looms as both protector and threat. It is a tool wielded by the powerful to maintain control, often blind to the struggles of the common people. Trials are public and often harsh, with little room for mercy. A misstep, a harsh word, a missed payment, a stolen loaf, can lead to punishment that strips you of dignity or life. You learn quickly to watch your tongue and measure your actions, knowing that survival often depends on caution and cunning rather than strength. Despite these pressures, moments of community and celebration offer respite. Festivals honoring gods like Dionysus and Athena bring people together in shared rituals of gay, music, and sacrifice. These occasions are brief escapes from the harshness, times when laughter rings out against the backdrop of hardship. Yet even in joy, there is an awareness of the fragility of life and the ever-present shadow of death. Ancient Greece is a world of stark contrasts between privilege and poverty, power and vulnerability, celebration and sorrow. To live here is to navigate these tensions daily, knowing that the line between life and death is perilously thin. The gods demand sacrifice, not just of animals, but of time, resources, and sometimes even lives. Worship is woven into the fabric of everyday existence, a constant negotiation with forces beyond mortal control. You learn early that neglecting the gods invites calamity, disease, famine, war, or worse. Temples dominate cityscapes, their grand columns and carved friezes a reminder of divine power and human frailty. Offerings of grain, wine, and blood flow steadily, rituals enacted with solemnity and fear. But sacrifices come at a cost. For the average citizen, they mean scarce food and hard labor diverted from survival to piety. For the poor, they represent an impossible burden, forcing choices between feeding a family and appeasing a deity. You see families scrimping and saving, pooling resources for a single festival or ritual, hoping it will turn the tide of misfortune. Failure to honor these obligations can mark you as impious, a dangerous label that isolates and condemns. Blood sacrifices, especially of animals, are common. The smell of burning flesh and incense fills the air during ceremonies meant to curry favor or avert disaster. You watch as priests carry out these rites with practiced hands, chanting words that mix hope and dread. The violence of sacrifice is both sacred and terrifying, a visceral reminder of the precarious balance between humanity and the divine. In some cases, sacrifice extends to humans. Stories circulate of scapegoats cast out or even killed to cleanse a community of sin or disease. While rare and often shrouded in secrecy, These acts underscore the brutal lengths to which people will go to survive. The line between religion and survival blurs in a world where every misfortune is a message and every ritual a plea. Living under the gaze of the gods is living in a constant state of tension between faith and fear, hope and despair. In ancient Greece, the sacred and the brutal are inseparable, and survival often hinges on the delicate art of sacrifice. Life in ancient Greece is defined by hard labor, but for many, the work itself is a slow form of death. The fields demand relentless toil from dawn until dusk, with little rest or relief. You are expected to plow, plant, and harvest crops by hand, often under the unforgiving sun, with tools made of wood and bronze that dull quickly and break easily. Every season carries the threat of drought, pests, or flood, any of which can ruin your efforts and plunge your family into famine. The weight of survival is borne on your back, your hands cracked and blistered, your muscles weary beyond repair. Slavery is woven deeply into this system. Wealthy landowners own vast estates worked by slaves who know no freedom, no respite, no hope. These men and women endure brutal conditions, subjected to long hours and harsh punishments. Their lives are expendable, their suffering invisible. For free citizens, the line between labor and servitude can be thin, especially when debts mount or misfortune strikes. You may find yourself working alongside slaves in the fields or workshops, sharing the same exhaustion and vulnerability. The dangers of manual labor extend beyond fatigue. Accidents are common and often fatal. Sharp tools can cut deeply, animals can trample, and exposure to the elements can lead to illness. With limited medical knowledge and resources, even minor injuries can spiral into deadly infections. You carry these risks daily, knowing that the work you do to survive might be the very thing that ends your life. Yet despite the hardships, labor is also tied to identity and honor. Farming your land or mastering a craft is a source of pride and a way to contribute to your community. It is a necessary evil, a bitter reality that shapes your existence. You dream of seasons of plenty, of harvests that feed your family and ease the endless struggle. But those dreams are fragile, always threatened by forces beyond your control. In ancient Greece, survival is a constant battle against the land itself, a struggle that defines the limits of human endurance and the cost of life. You awaken to the scent of burnt olive oil and wood smoke mingling in the cool morning air, a mixture so familiar that it stirs a restless feeling deep within you. The city is already stirring. Voices echo faintly from distant streets. Footsteps clatter sharply against uneven cobblestones, and the bleating of goats punctuates the noise, weaving a tapestry of life that is both chaotic and routine. Yet beneath this lively scene, there's an unmistakable tension, a simmering undercurrent of fear and unease that snakes through the narrow alleys and open squares. In ancient Greece, danger is never far, lurking just beneath the surface, and today, for reasons you cannot yet grasp, it feels especially close. It clings to the morning mist like a shadow, following your every step. The marketplaces teem with life and noise, a cacophony of sound and movement that both invigorates and overwhelms. Vendors shout and haggle with practiced cries, pushing their goods with a desperate urgency born of necessity. Fresh fish glisten on beds of crushed ice. Olives spill in vibrant green and black heaps. Pottery of every shape and color is stacked precariously high, and spices scent the air with sharp, intoxicating aromas. Buyers with sharp tongues and sharper eyes haggle fiercely, each a skilled negotiator in a game where every drachma counts. Yet beneath this lively facade, a darker reality pulses. Competition breeds envy, mistrust, and simmering resentments. Every misstep, be it an unfair bargain, a slight glance, or a whispered rumor, can ignite conflict that spreads like wildfire. The marketplace is as much a battlefield of words and wills as the city's warfields are of spears and shields. The laws that govern this city are harsh, swift, and often unforgiving, and they tend to favor the powerful, the wealthy landowners, the influential magistrates, and the well-connected elites. Justice is less about fairness and more about maintaining order and control. A man accused of theft, whether guilty or not, might find himself not just at the mercy of the courts, but also vulnerable to the wrath of angry mobs. Justice here is sometimes served by a mob wielding stones and fists, where trials are bypassed by raw, primal rage. You've heard stories of neighbors dragged from their homes, beaten in public squares, or even worse, executed without trial, all because the crowd's thirst for vengeance eclipsed any semblance of law. It is a world where lawlessness and order coexist uneasily, where fear can breed violence in the blink of an eye. As you weave your way through the crowded, sunlit streets, your senses are assaulted by the jumble of sights and sounds. The chatter of merchants, the clatter of carts loaded with goods, the laughter of children playing in the dust. It all mixes with a more sinister note. You pass a gathering of men and women clustered around a public speaker standing atop a worn crate. His voice rises, passionate and sharp, condemning corruption among the city's leaders and calling for retribution against those who have betrayed the public trust. The crowd listens with rapt attention, their faces tight with frustration and anger. You can see the tension rising in their expressions, like a storm ready to break. The speaker's words fan the flames of dissent, stirring memories of recent scandals and injustices. Political turmoil is not a distant or abstract concept here. It is woven into the very fabric of daily life. Leaders from rival factions vie for influence and power through impassioned speeches, strategic alliances, and sometimes outright force. Public assemblies can devolve into shouting matches or even violent clashes. The common people caught in the crossfire bear the heaviest burdens, caught between competing interests, the whims of tyrants, and the fragile promises of democracy. You sense the volatility in the air. The possibility of unrest hangs palpably over the city like a gathering storm. As you navigate this complex landscape, your thoughts turn inward. You are but a small figure amid the vast chaos, vulnerable and exposed in a society that values strength, cunning, and loyalty above all else. The city's grandeur, the gleaming marble columns, the intricately carved statues of gods and heroes, conceals a fragile reality. Beneath the surface lies a society struggling to hold itself together, balancing precariously on the edge of order and chaos. Survival here demands more than physical strength. It requires caution, keen awareness, and an ability to navigate the shifting alliances and treacherous politics that define everyday life. Trust is a scarce commodity, and danger is a constant companion. Ancient Greece is a land of striking contrasts. Brilliant art and philosophy flourish alongside brutality and despair. Every day lived is a victory against forces that seek to claim you, be they sickness, poverty, violence, or the machinations of men. As the sun climbs higher in the cloudless sky, its heat pressing down on the bustling city, you steel yourself for whatever the day may bring, knowing that in this world, fortune can turn on a whim, and survival depends on both luck and resolve. The harbor bustles with life as the salty tang of the sea mingles with the sharp scent of fish laid out on wooden stalls. The air vibrates with the clang of metal striking wood as sailors prepare their vessels for departure. Ropes are tightened, sails unfurled, and last-minute repairs hurriedly made. The cries of dock workers, the chatter of merchants, and the calls of seagulls create a symphony of activity that feels eternal, as if the pulse of the city beats strongest where land meets water. Yet beneath this lively facade, there lurks a shadow, a persistent gnawing fear that clouds every transaction and tugs at every sailor's heart. Pirates, ruthless and cunning, cast a long shadow over the harbor, their presence a constant reminder that no voyage is ever truly safe. These marauders are not petty thieves, but feared predators of the sea, striking swiftly and mercilessly, their attacks leaving devastation in their wake. For those whose lives depend on the sea, fishermen, traders, sailors, pirates represent an omnipresent threat, turning every journey into a perilous gamble where fortune and death hang in a delicate balance. Ships are the lifeblood of commerce and communication in ancient Greece, their sturdy hulls laden with grain, olive oil, wine, pottery, and other goods vital to the survival and prosperity of city-states scattered along the coastline and beyond. These vessels are the arteries of a sprawling network of trade that connects distant lands, fueling economies and enriching cities. But with every voyage comes inherent risk. The waters, while beautiful and bountiful, are treacherous, not only because of storms and hidden reefs, but because of human threats lurking just beyond the horizon. Pirates know these waters intimately, navigating through narrow straits and hidden coves where larger ships dare not follow. Their swift, agile vessels allow them to ambush unsuspecting prey with deadly efficiency. Their attacks are brutal and calculated, often leaving entire crews slaughtered or taken captive. The captured are frequently enslaved, sold into a harsh existence far from home, or held for ransom in hopes of lining the pirates' coffers. The uncertainty of such a fate haunts every merchant and sailor, casting a pall over the otherwise vibrant maritime life. The naval forces deployed by city-states to protect their coastlines and trade routes are limited in number and resources. These fleets, though brave and skilled, often find themselves stretched thin, unable to patrol the vast and winding shores or respond swiftly to every distress call. Naval warfare is a perilous affair. Battles are fought on cramped decks, where the clash of bronze, the roar of shouted commands, and the chaos of close-quarter combat meld into a deadly cacophony. Oarsmen, frequently slaves or the poorest citizens, endure exhausting hours rowing in unison under the scorching sun or chilling winds. Their labor is relentless and their mortality high, as they face not only the dangers of enemy fire, but also the brutal conditions below decks, cramped, unsanitary, and suffocating. Death at sea can be immediate, through drowning or violent injury, or it can creep slowly, as disease and malnutrition take their toll over long voyages. The sea is unforgiving, a harsh mistress that claims many lives without ceremony. Stories abound of sailors lost to sudden storms that rise without warning, of vessels dashed against hidden rocks, and of raids that leave entire crews missing or dead. Families wait anxiously on shore, their hopes dimming with each passing day, uncertain if their loved ones will ever return. The sea's beauty, with its endless horizons and shimmering waves, is matched only by its cruelty, a vast and indifferent force capable of nurturing life and swiftly extinguishing it. For many who live near the coast, the sea is both a source of sustenance and a graveyard, a giver and a taker. To survive is to rely on skillful navigation, swift ships, and sometimes nothing more than sheer luck. Living near the sea means living with a constant awareness that disaster can strike at any moment. The shimmering waves that beckon also conceal dangers both natural and human-made. Ancient Greece is a land steeped in tales of gods and heroes, their legends echoing across temples and theaters. But beneath those stories lies a harsher reality. Pirates and peril roam the waters, ready to turn a prosperous voyage into a nightmare. The waves carry not just the promise of wealth and adventure, but the looming threat of death, a reminder that in this ancient world, the boundary between life and oblivion is as shifting and unpredictable as the sea itself. You stumble through the winding, narrow alleys of the city, each step heavier than the last as exhaustion settles over you like a suffocating weight. Your shoulders sag beneath the invisible burden, every breath shallow and ragged, as if the very air itself conspires against you. The stifling atmosphere is thick with the scent of unwashed bodies pressed close together in cramped quarters, mingling with the acrid smell of roasting meat and the sour tang of stale wine spilled long ago. Around you, the city's ancient stone walls seem to close in, compressing the space into a suffocating cage. The cacophony of sounds, merchants' cries hawking their wares, the relentless clatter of carts over uneven cobblestones, and somewhere in the distance, the plaintive, gut-wrenching wail of a grieving woman forms a grim symphony that accompanies your weary journey. In this ancient metropolis, the razor-thin boundary between life and death feels almost tangible. And tonight, more than ever, you sense that you are perilously close to crossing it. Your mind drifts back to the day you first fell ill, a memory sharpened by pain and fear. Fever swept over you like a tidal wave, dragging your senses into a murky haze where the world blurred into nothing but agony and delirium. You recall the desperate hope you placed in the temple's sacred sleep, the ritual of incubation where sufferers sought healing through divine dreams. But the sanctuary offered no relief, only elusive visions that faded upon waking, leaving you clutching at shadows and whispers. Then came the healer's knife, cold, crude, and unforgiving. The scar it left throbs beneath the chill of night, a constant reminder of your vulnerability. Worse still, the wound festers beneath your skin, an unseen enemy that creeps deeper with every passing hour, threatening to spread decay through your weakening body. There is no medicine here, no salve to halt the rot, only the slow, relentless progression toward oblivion. Despite your physical decline, your mind clings desperately to awareness, sharpened by dread. Death here is neither swift nor merciful. Instead, it creeps like a shadow in the dark, stalking every breath, every fevered night that robs you of sleep, every agonizing hour where pain and consciousness intermingle in a cruel dance. You fear not just the end itself, but the shame that may accompany it, the loneliness of dying forgotten in a city teeming with life, yet indifferent to the suffering of the weak. The streets are unforgiving, and those who fall ill often find themselves abandoned, left to fend alone amid strangers who turn away from sickness as if it were contagious shame. There is no safety net, no caregivers with potions and prayers strong enough to save you. Survival here feels like a cruel lottery where the odds are stacked overwhelmingly against you. Your thoughts wander to the gods, the ever-watchful deities who rule over fate and health. You remember the sacrifices offered, the prayers whispered in trembling voices to beg for mercy, for healing, for another chance at life. Yet faith feels like a fragile, delicate shield, one easily shattered by the harsh realities surrounding you. In your heart, you know you are but a pawn in a game far beyond mortal understanding, tossed and turned by unseen forces indifferent to human suffering. The city's grandeur, the gleaming temples, the marble statues, the echoes of epic stories, is a hollow mask that conceals a darker truth. Beneath the beauty lies widespread despair and relentless hardship, shadows that stretch into every corner of daily life. As the night deepens and the city's bustle fades to a muted murmur, you finally close your eyes, surrendering to the encroaching darkness. You seek release, not just from pain, but from the unending battle against invisible enemies, the creeping disease, the gnawing despair, and the unyielding march of time that slowly erodes all hope. In ancient Greece, survival is a relentless struggle against these forces, a fight not just to live, but to hold on to dignity and meaning in the face of overwhelming odds. And sometimes, when all strength fails, surrender becomes the only escape, an end to suffering in a world where mercy is rare and death waits patiently at every door. The city stirs awake to a complex symphony of sounds that weave together life's vibrancy and its relentless struggle. As dawn breaks, Market stalls unfurl their awnings, revealing vibrant displays of fresh produce, fragrant herbs, and handcrafted wares. Merchants call out their prices with practiced enthusiasm, competing to attract the earliest customers. The irresistible aroma of freshly baked bread drifts through the air, mingling with the ever-present dust kicked up by the shuffle of countless feet and the pungent sweat of laborers already at work. This daily awakening is a vivid testament to human resilience and the constant hustle for survival. Yet beneath this lively, colorful exterior lies a tension so palpable it almost hums, a coiled serpent lurking beneath the surface, waiting for an opportunity to strike. In ancient Greece, power is a prize bitterly contested every day, and survival is far from guaranteed. No one, whether rich or poor, citizen or stranger, escapes the grip of this unyielding contest. Even as you navigate the crowded streets, brushing shoulders with traders, artisans, and beggars alike, you feel the invisible weight of countless eyes watching, judging, calculating, waiting patiently for you to falter or reveal a weakness that can be exploited. As you move through the throng, you pass by small clusters of animated conversations. Groups huddled together, voices low yet urgent, exchanging news of the latest decrees handed down by city officials, murmuring about new taxes poised to drain their already meager coffers, and trading ominous rumors of conflicts brewing both within the city walls and beyond the distant borders. Here, politics is no abstract theory discussed in scholarly halls. It is an immediate, brutal reality that touches every aspect of life. Decisions made in boisterous assemblies or whispered behind closed doors in dimly lit chambers ripple through the lives of every citizen and foreigner. Alliances form and dissolve like shifting tides. Rivalries grow sharper, and the consequences of these power struggles often fall heaviest on those with the least power to defend themselves. You sense the fragile balance of this intricate dance, where a single misstep, whether a word spoken too loudly or an alliance betrayed, can change your fate overnight. The law itself is a formidable double-edged sword, wielded not with impartial justice, but as a tool for protecting some while crushing others beneath its weight. Punishments are severe, often meted out publicly to serve as a harsh deterrent against dissent and disorder. You have witnessed neighbors seized for unpaid debts, dragged from their homes amid jeers and accusations, and heard tales of others exiled, imprisoned, or worse, silenced forever for daring to speak against the ruling powers. Justice in this city is rarely blind. Instead, it is shaped and warped by wealth, social status, and the favor of influential patrons. For many, surviving the city's relentless pressures means learning to navigate this labyrinth of laws and favors, where political savvy can mean the difference between life and death as much as avoiding physical threats. In moments of quiet reflection, you contemplate your own precarious place in this intricate web, not a powerful magistrate nor a wealthy landowner, but an ordinary soul caught in the crossfire of forces far beyond your control. Trust is a precious and scarce commodity, exchanged cautiously and often paid for in whispers, secrets, and cautious glances. Loyalty is never given freely. It is a currency traded carefully, a fragile bond that can shatter under pressure. You learn to listen more than to speak, to observe the shifting tides of opinion and power with a careful eye. Your survival depends on your ability to fade into the crowd, to become invisible when danger looms, and to make yourself small when the winds of fortune shift unpredictably. Ancient Greece is a world where mere strength is not enough to endure. Survival demands cunning, discretion, and the constant calculation of risks. Every day you manage to live another day, weaving through a society poised to discard the weak and vulnerable, is itself a small victory, a testament to human resilience in a world that offers no guarantees and punishes mistakes without mercy. Here, life is a fragile and precious struggle against forces both seen and unseen, where the margins between safety and ruin are as thin as the ancient city's winding alleys. The midday sun beats down with a punishing intensity, casting shimmering waves of heat across the uneven stone streets of the city. Sweat gathers on your brow and trickles down your back as you press forward through the crowded thoroughfares, each footstep kicking up dust from the sun-baked ground. Around you, the sounds of life rise in a chorus, merchants shouting their prices, children laughing or crying, sandals slapping against worn flagstones. The city is alive, pulsing with energy, a testament to its people's resilience and tenacity. But that liveliness is only a mask, stretched thin over the rot beneath. Beneath the surface bustle, a quieter, more insidious presence festers: disease. It creeps through alleys and homes like an unseen predator, carried in the breath of strangers, in the food hastily prepared in open-air kitchens, and in the water drawn from wells long contaminated. In the crowded quarters where the poor live shoulder to shoulder, where waste is dumped into the streets and water runs muddy with runoff and excrement, disease flourishes unchecked. The stench of rot and refuse clings to everything, a constant reminder that danger is not always visible. It lives in the very air you breathe. Illnesses arrive without warning and take root quickly. Plague does not knock politely. It rips through neighborhoods with the fury of a wildfire. Typhus, dysentery, and fevers of every kind are common afflictions that show no mercy to rich or poor, young or old. In the heat of summer, the death toll rises as the stagnant air thickens with infection. One moment you see a neighbor laughing at the market, and the next they are shuttered away behind closed doors, burning with fever. When sickness descends, the choices available are few and grim. There are no hospitals, no trained doctors in the modern sense, just healers who rely on herbs, ritual, and the limited knowledge passed down through generations. Remedies are often no better than guesswork. Incantations, bleeding, or purgatives are used to draw out the sickness, but more often they only hasten the end. Those too ill to care for themselves must rely on family, but when entire households fall ill, even that fragile safety net crumbles. The sick are often abandoned or left to die slowly, their cries echoing faintly through closed shutters. Death comes frequently, and when it does, it is not always met with ceremony. There is no time for long mourning. Funerals are brief, the dead carried quickly to pyres or burial sites, their names whispered in grief before the living must turn back to their own survival. Along your path, you come upon a small shrine nestled between two crumbling buildings. Simple as it is, little more than a pile of stones with fading carvings, it has become a site of desperate faith. Worn offerings litter its base, wilted herbs, bits of bread, wax figures shaped in the likeness of limbs or organs meant to symbolize healing. People pass by and pause, clutching amulets strung with beads or carved with protective symbols. They whisper prayers, not loudly, but fervently, as if volume might anger the gods rather than move them. These acts of devotion are as much a ritual of comfort as of hope, for divine mercy is all that remains when earthly protections have failed. But the gods are fickle, and you've seen plenty of the faithful succumb alongside the irreverent. Faith alone cannot shield you from a contagion that obeys no temple rules. As you continue walking, you notice more signs. Pale faces peeking from behind curtains, bodies hunched and trembling in shaded doorways. Whispers curl through the air like smoke. There has been another outbreak in the northern district, they say, though no one will say it too loudly. To acknowledge it is to invite it, as if fear itself could summon sickness. The rumor spreads like a chill, dampening the energy of the city as shopkeepers begin to pull their wares inside and parents gather their children home early. You feel the tension rise, that familiar prelude to a coming storm. People begin to avoid one another. Conversations grow shorter. Eyes shift nervously in crowds. In this world, survival is as fragile as spun glass. Every breath drawn is a gamble. Every touch, whether a handshake, A brush of the shoulder, a shared bowl, is laced with potential danger. You do what you can to protect yourself. You wash your hands in streams where the water still runs clear. You keep to the edges of crowds. You turn your face away from coughing strangers. But the city itself seems designed to thwart these efforts. The close quarters, the lack of proper waste disposal, the mixing of hundreds of people from all walks of life in such dense proximity, all these conspire against your health. The battle you fight is not against enemies with swords or spears. It is against what you cannot see. The bacteria, the contaminated water, the fetid air thick with the breath of the dying. These are foes you cannot strike down, only avoid for as long as luck permits. Ancient Greece may be a land of gods, of oracles and heroes, but in moments like this, it feels more like a vast, slow trap. An intricate city of stone and shadow, waiting for one slip, one breath too many. And once sickness claims you, there is little to do but endure the pain and pray that death arrives quickly. The rhythm of life in ancient Greece is dictated not only by the rising and setting of the sun, but by the constant shadow cast by death itself. It weaves through every household, every conversation, every act of faith, silently asserting its place in the human story. Death is not a stranger here. It is a frequent visitor, sometimes arriving as a sudden blow, an accident in the marketplace, a skirmish gone wrong, a violent crime committed in the night. Other times it settles in slowly, dragging its victims through prolonged illness, wasting them day by day until they vanish like a breath into the hot Aegean wind. Every community, no matter how prosperous or poor, carries the weight of absence. Graves dot the countryside, simple mounds of earth with modest markers, some adorned with faded inscriptions, others left unmarked and forgotten. On the outskirts of towns, where the noise of life fades, the silence is filled with the unspoken presence of those who came before. In these quiet corners, the land remembers, even if the people move on. Funerary rites are among the most sacred traditions in this ancient world. They are not merely gestures of grief, but vital rituals believed to ensure a soul's safe passage to the afterlife. A death in the household sets into motion a flurry of preparations rooted in centuries of practice and belief. The body is carefully washed, anointed with oils, and dressed in clean garments, symbols of dignity and reverence. Coins are placed over the eyes or in the mouth to pay Charon, the ferryman who guides souls across the river Styx. Without them, it is said the dead will wander the banks forever, unable to reach the underworld. Family and friends gather for the laying out of the body, a time for both mourning and remembrance. Wails of lament echo through the home, not just expressions of grief, but ritualistic calls meant to honor the dead and acknowledge the gods. The funeral procession winds its way through the city or countryside, a somber parade of those left behind, carrying torches, offerings, and memories. The burial itself is accompanied by prayers and final tributes, libations poured, flowers scattered, names spoken aloud in the hope they will not be forgotten. But this reverent passage into death is not guaranteed to all. For many, especially the poor, the enslaved, or those who die far from home, the rituals are never performed. Their bodies may be discarded in shallow graves or communal pits, their final moments stripped of dignity. Without proper rites, it is believed their souls remain restless, trapped in limbo between the realms of the living and the dead. This belief adds another layer of pain to the survivors, not only the sorrow of absence, but the spiritual anguish of fearing that a loved one's journey is incomplete. It creates a social divide, even in death. Wealth and status determine not just how one lives, but how one is remembered, how one is mourned, and whether one's spirit will ever find peace. You find your thoughts drifting to those you've lost, faces now only preserved in memory, their voices faded but still echoing in your heart. The ache of their absence is a quiet constant, a thread of sorrow that winds through your days. You think, too, of those you might lose, for in this world, no bond is secure. A simple illness, an accident, a political accusation can erase someone in a breath. Mourning is not just a private pain, it is a communal burden shared among neighbors and kin. Wakes are places of sorrow, but also of storytelling, of laughter amid tears, of remembering not just the end, but the entirety of a life lived. Children learn early what it means to grieve, growing up in a world where mortality is never hidden or softened. It shapes the way people live, with urgency, with reverence, with caution. Relationships are deepened by the ever-present awareness that they may be fleeting. Ancient Greece is a land of philosophical brilliance and artistic achievement, but beneath its beauty lies a profound familiarity with loss. It is a place where death is woven into the tapestry of daily life, not as a specter to be ignored, but as a reality to be honored and feared. Every day survived is a fragile victory. Every smile, every meal shared, every breath drawn beneath the harsh Mediterranean sun is made more precious by the knowledge that it might be your last. Life here is vibrant because it is uncertain, burning brightly in the shadow of oblivion. In this world, the line between the living and the dead is thin, and it is this very fragility that lends existence its fierce, desperate grace. The city's courts are not sanctuaries of impartial judgment, but volatile arenas where justice is tangled with ego, ambition, and spectacle. They are not places of quiet deliberation and reasoned evidence, but stages, public theaters where citizens gather not only to witness justice, but to be entertained by it. Trials are grand performances, filled with drama and passion, where the tone of a voice can carry more weight than truth, and rhetoric trumps fact. The accuser and the accused face off not merely with evidence or logic, but with the sharpness of their words and the force of their delivery. It is not uncommon for men to spend months preparing elaborate speeches, studying the moods of the citizen jury, rehearsing every gesture and pause. In ancient Greece, especially Athens, speaking well is not a luxury. It is a survival skill. The man who cannot defend himself, who falters or stammers, is not just shamed, he risks his life. The loudest, most persuasive voice in the room often becomes the voice of justice, even when the truth is murky or completely absent. Behind the flowery speeches and the impassioned appeals lies a system rigged in favor of those who hold wealth and social standing. The wealthy have the resources to hire logographers, professional speechwriters, to craft their defense, or to offer bribes to key figures in the process. They form alliances, call on influential friends, and even manipulate the structure of the court itself. Jurors, drawn from the citizen body, are not immune to personal bias, peer pressure, or outright corruption. Many decisions are guided not by law, but by politics, grudges, or the whim of the crowd. If you are poor, or worse, a foreigner, your chances of receiving a fair hearing are slim at best. Even the innocent must tread carefully, for the accusation alone can be damning. A whispered lie can cascade into public outrage, and public outrage can lead to exile or death. The fear of facing the court drives many to silence, swallowing their grievances rather than risking the wrath of the system. When punishment looms so easily and arbitrarily, even the most righteous may choose to hide rather than speak. The severity of penalties handed down by these courts is often jarring. What might seem a petty disagreement over property, a debt, or a personal insult can spiral into something far more dangerous. A man accused of theft may be executed. A careless word taken as slander might result in exile. An exile in ancient Greece is not a simple relocation. It is social death. You are stripped from your home, your city, your community, left to wander as an outsider with no rights or protection. Such outcomes are not rare. They happen often enough that most citizens carry the fear of the court like a shadow. Even the act of appearing in court, whether as plaintiff, defendant, or witness, requires careful calculation. One wrong word, one poorly timed admission can bring ruin. The law is not a shield here. It is a weapon used most effectively by those with the training and power to wield it. Yet despite the dangers, the courts are inseparable from civic life. They are one of the few venues where ordinary citizens can participate in the machinery of governance. The jury system, composed of hundreds of male citizens chosen by lot, is seen as a democratic innovation. Verdicts are delivered swiftly, sometimes within a day, and reflect the collective will, however biased or uninformed, of the citizenry. The courts function as an instrument of community identity, reinforcing shared norms and punishing those who step outside them. In this sense, the law becomes a mirror of the city's soul, showing both its ideals and its flaws. The citizens take pride in their ability to judge, to punish, to weigh the fate of their peers. It gives them power, but also breeds suspicion, for anyone can become a target. You learn quickly that to live in this system is to live carefully. You choose your words with precision. You avoid drawing attention. You memorize laws not because they protect you, but because they can be used against you. You understand that surviving the legal gauntlet is as vital as avoiding plague or war. The courts are another battlefield in a city where every day is a contest for survival. In ancient Greece, justice is not blind. It watches closely, shaped by the hands of men, fueled by ambition, fear, and desire. To walk freely is not a right. It is a privilege earned by understanding how to navigate the treacherous currents of a system that can lift you one day and destroy you the next. The sun blazes mercilessly as you labor in the fields, its intensity unrelenting, a tyrant in the sky. The golden light that nourishes the crops also scorches your skin, baking the earth until it cracks and pressing down on your shoulders like an invisible weight. From the moment dawn breaks, the day demands your body. Your hands are blistered from the rough handles of your tools, your back aches from hours bent in repetitive toil, and your vision blurs as the heat shimmers around you like a mirage. Dust coats your arms and settles into your nostrils and throat, mixing with sweat until every breath feels like inhaling sand. The olive trees that dot the land offer little relief, their narrow shadows too thin to shield more than a sliver of your body. The sweat pours freely from your brow, stinging your eyes, soaking your tunic, and evaporating so quickly it leaves behind a salty crust. And still, the sun climbs higher. It does not care about your suffering. It shines with indifferent cruelty, a god that blesses and punishes in equal measure. Farming in ancient Greece is no romantic endeavor. It is a gamble, a wager made daily against the unpredictable moods of nature. The land is your partner and your enemy. The soil must be coaxed into yielding food with care and timing, but even the most devoted efforts can be undone in a moment. A sudden windstorm can flatten young crops. A single week without rain can stunt the harvest. Torrential rains might wash away seedlings, while dry spells transform fertile ground into lifeless powder. You learn to read the skies with the desperation of a gambler scanning cards. You study the patterns of clouds, the scent of moisture in the wind, the silence of birds before a change in weather. But all the knowledge in the world cannot summon rain or hold back the sun. Sometimes, entire seasons are lost. A failed harvest means hunger not just for your family, but for your village. When the fields fail, trade slows, stores run low, and people begin to ration food with anxious eyes and silent prayers. During the hottest hours, when the sun is directly overhead and the air becomes thick and heavy, you retreat into whatever shadow you can find. Perhaps it's the broad canopy of a fig tree or the sagging roof of a half-collapsed hut left behind by a departed neighbor. You sit on hard earth, letting your tools rest beside you, and drink from a cracked clay jug. The water inside is lukewarm and tastes faintly of dust and clay, but you drink it slowly, savoring every drop as if it were wine. there is never enough. You cannot afford to waste it, and so you swallow your thirst and conserve what little remains for the journey home. In these moments of stillness, your muscles tremble with fatigue. Your thoughts drift, not to luxury or escape, but simply to the hope that tomorrow might be kinder. The sun continues to burn above you, and even in shade, the air feels thick with its heat, a weight that presses on your lungs and dulls your senses. There is no escape. There is only endurance. The sun's power shapes every aspect of your existence. It is the master of your schedule, dictating when you wake, when you rest, when you plant, and when you reap. Its presence governs the seasons, sets the tempo of the year. Entire festivals are arranged to honor its influence. Celebrations of planting, harvest, and the summer solstice, all offered in tribute to its dual nature. The Greeks gave the sun a face and a name: Helios, who drives his chariot across the sky each day. He is both revered and feared, a reminder that even divine forces can be capricious and cruel. You have stood in temples and watched priests offer libations and chant hymns to Helios, asking him to temper his flames and bless the land. You have seen villagers stare skyward, eyes closed, offering silent pleas for rain or cooler days. But the sun answers no one. It follows its path with unwavering resolve. In this world, survival is not measured in victories or conquest, but in quiet endurance. It is counted in beads of sweat, in sunburnt skin, in the number of days your crops remain standing. You mark the passage of time by the condition of your hands, the wear in your sandals, the ache in your bones. There are no holidays from hunger, no breaks from drought. Every day begins the same way, with the rising sun and the knowledge that the struggle will begin again. Yet, even amid this hardship, you hold on to hope. You know that night will come eventually, bringing a brief respite in the cool darkness. You cling to the rhythm of the seasons, the cycles that remind you that this brutal heat too shall pass. But as long as the sun rules the sky, you will labor beneath it, bowed, burned, but not broken. In ancient Greece, to farm is not merely to feed, it is to fight every day against the vast, impersonal force of nature itself. The smell of sweat, scorched earth, and burning charcoal clings to every surface of the cramped workshops where artisans bend the raw elements of nature to their will. The air is thick with heat and dust, filled with the constant rhythm of hammers striking metal, of chisels scraping stone, of spinning pottery wheels humming with urgency. There is no silence here, only the relentless noise of survival. Craftsmanship is not just an occupation, it is a test of endurance. Every movement must be precise, every action deliberate. The slightest miscalculation, a misaligned mold, an overheated crucible, an unsteady hand can mean hours of work lost, or worse, a serious injury. Fires rage in the forges, their light casting dancing shadows on soot-streaked walls. The tools are brutal, blunt, and unforgiving. Your hands are never clean, your fingers always calloused, split, or blistered from the day's labor. You tie strips of cloth around your wrists and forearms to stave off burns, but they offer little protection. There is no safety equipment, no pause for breath. The fire waits for no one. The danger is constant, and there is no such thing as leniency. When someone is hurt, a burn from molten bronze, a slashed palm from a chipped blade, there are no physicians waiting in clean rooms. There are only crude bandages, medicinal herbs, and whispered invocations to the gods. You've seen a man lose fingers to a mishandled blade and return to work 2 days later, grimacing through the pain because the alternative is hunger. Each accident becomes a lesson, etched not in memory, but in scar tissue. Pain is a part of the craft, just as much as clay, iron, or fire. Those who can't endure it don't last. In these workshops, there's no room for weakness. Each missed hour is a coin lost. Each wound, a mark of your place in the brutal hierarchy of labor. And yet, even among these harsh realities, there is discipline, camaraderie, even a sense of pride. You learn to read the materials like language, how bronze sings when it reaches the right temperature, how clay resists before it yields. You learn to measure time not in hours, but in how many jugs you shaped, how many nails you forged, how many flaws you caught before they turned fatal. Apprenticeships begin early. Boys, sometimes no older than 7 or 8, are introduced to the trade with the promise of future stability, but only if they endure the long, punishing climb. They fetch water, stoke fires, sweep floors choked with ash and fragments of shattered pots. Slowly, they are trusted with tools and then with tasks. Their mistakes are corrected sharply, sometimes cruelly, but they learn. They learn because their futures depend on it. In the workshop, every success is hard-won, and every failure is visible, tangible, unhidden. The scars become part of the education. Craft is not taught gently. It is forged like the weapons on the anvil, through pressure, fire, and repetition. Despite all this, there is something sacred about the work. Your hands, rough and stained, create the world around you. You shape amphorae that will carry oil across seas, forge blades that will guard city walls, carve statues that will be praised or feared. Your labor is woven into the fabric of daily life, into the economy, into the soul of the polis. It is this that sustains you, not comfort, but meaning. Even if your name is never known, your work endures. It connects you to a lineage older than memory, one that reaches back to the myths and will stretch forward long after your final breath. But the pride of craftsmanship cannot erase its cost. The workshop is a furnace in which bodies and minds are tested to their limit. In ancient Greece, the artisan is both creator and survivor. There is dignity in your calloused hands, but there is also pain, a daily reminder that every object crafted is a negotiation with danger. These workshops, filled with smoke and flame, are not sanctuaries of artistry, but battlegrounds, where men and boys contend with the elements and with themselves. The beauty that leaves these rooms comes at a price, one that is paid in sweat, blood, and perseverance. Here, creativity is not leisure, it is labor. It is survival. As the sun dips low behind the hills, the city settles into a fragile calm. Yet beneath the fading light lies a world restless and uneasy. The wealthy gather in their homes, insulated from the struggles of the streets. Their lives are marked by privilege, access to education, comfort, and influence. But even they are not immune to the dangers that stalk the city. Political intrigue, rivalries, and shifting alliances weave a complex web where fortunes rise and fall overnight. The elite navigate a landscape of power plays and deception, where trust is scarce and betrayal common. You overhear whispered conversations in marble courtyards, where the fate of cities is decided over wine and veiled threats. The stakes are high and the consequences deadly. Even a misstep can lead to exile, imprisonment, or assassination. Survival here depends on cunning as much as strength. Yet for all their power, the wealthy depend on the labor and loyalty of those beneath them. Slaves toil in their households, artisans craft their goods, and soldiers fight their wars. The divide between privilege and poverty is stark, a chasm that defines the social order. For most, life is a daily grind to meet basic needs, while the few hold sway over the many. You sense the tension in this imbalance, a pressure building beneath the surface. Revolts and uprisings simmer in the margins, fueled by desperation and injustice. The city's foundation is as fragile as the trust that holds it together. Ancient Greece is a world of extremes, where luxury and suffering coexist, and survival depends on navigating the treacherous currents of society. As the sun sets on the ancient world, you reflect on the journey that brought you here, through streets teeming with life and death, through fields scorched by relentless suns, through battles fought with bronze and blood. Ancient Greece is a land of beauty and brutality, where gods and mortals dance on the edge of fate. Every breath is a victory, every dawn a fragile promise. You have witnessed the harsh realities faced by those who walked these stones, the constant threats of disease, violence, famine, and war. You have felt the weight of superstition and the razor's edge of justice. You have seen how survival was never guaranteed, but demanded every ounce of strength, cunning, and hope. It was a world that could kill you immediately, not just with swords or plagues, but with the relentless pressures of existence itself. Yet amid the darkness, there was resilience, the spirit to endure, to create, to seek meaning in a chaotic world. The philosophers, poets, and artists who pondered life's mysteries, even as the shadows closed in. The communities that gathered to share stories, meals, and prayers. The simple acts of kindness and courage that flickered like stars in the night. Your journey ends here, but the echoes of ancient Greece live on, in the foundations of Western thought, in the art and architecture that still inspire, and in the enduring human story of struggle and survival. Remember, the past is not a distant dream, but a mirror, reflecting the challenges and triumphs that continue to shape us. As you step back into your own time, carry with you the lessons of a world where life was precious because it was perilously fragile. And remember, survival is not just about avoiding death, but about finding the strength to live despite it,